Death came for Lena Whitaker on a frozen February night, not with mercy, but with wind that cut like knives and snow that buried hope 6 feet deep. Abandoned, betrayed, left to die on a frontier trail where screams freeze before they leave your throat. But survival isn't about luck. It's about stumbling through hell until you find a door and praying whoever's behind it doesn't slam it in your face. This is a story about a woman who refused to quit, a man who couldn't outrun his demons, and the moment when two broken people became each other's only chance. Hit that like button and drop your city in the comments. Let's see how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. The cold didn't care that Lena Whitaker was only 26, didn't care that she'd never hurt anyone, didn't give a damn that 3 days ago she'd believed in fresh starts and second chances. All the cold cared about was killing her. She couldn't feel her feet anymore. That should have terrified her, but honestly, it was almost a relief. The pain had been so bad for the last mile, or maybe 3 miles, she'd lost count, that not feeling them seemed like a gift. A really terrible frostbitten gift that would probably cost her some toes if she lived long enough to worry about it. Wind screamed across the Wyoming plains like something alive and furious. Snow came at her sideways, a million frozen needles stabbing every exposed inch of skin. She'd wrapped her scarf around her face hours ago, but it was soaked through now, ice crystals forming on the wool. Each breath felt like swallowing broken glass. Lena fell. Not dramatically. Not like in the stories she used to read to her students back in Philadelphia, where heroines collapsed gracefully into snowdrifts and woke up in warm beds. She just stopped walking. Her legs quit, simple as that. 1 second she was putting one foot in front of the other, the only thought in her head for the past hour, and the next she was on her knees in snow up to her waist. "Get up," she whispered. Her voice sounded strange, small, lost in all that white noise. "Get up, you stupid woman." Her body didn't listen. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. The wagon train had been her escape, her one shot at leaving behind the whispers and the shame. Inappropriate conduct with a student. That's what they'd called it. Never mind that she'd done nothing wrong. Never mind that she'd only tried to help a struggling boy with his reading after school. Never mind that his mother had seen something that wasn't there and decided to ruin Lena's entire life over it. Didn't matter now. Nothing mattered except the cold and the dark and the fact that she was going to die out here because Henry Watts, that lying, cowardly bastard, had decided she wasn't worth the trouble. "Storm's coming, Miss Whitaker. Real bad one. We gotta move fast and your wagon's slowing us down. Axle's cracked, and we ain't got time to fix it proper." She'd believed him. Trusted that he'd come back after the storm passed. Trusted that frontier people were supposed to look out for each other, that there was some kind of honor code out here in the wild places. Turned out there wasn't. Turned out Henry Watts was just another man who made promises he had no intention of keeping. They'd left her, all of them. Drove off into the gathering storm with barely a backward glance, and when she'd called after them, screamed, really, her voice had just disappeared into the wind like it never existed at all. That was yesterday. Or maybe the day before. Time had stopped meaning much once the storm hit full force. Lena tried to stand. Her legs shook, refused to hold her weight. She tried again. Fell forward into the snow, face first, and for a long moment just lay there, feeling the cold seep through her coat, her dress, her skin. Down into her bones where it settled in deep. This is how it ends, she thought, frozen to death in the middle of nowhere because you trusted the wrong people. Again. The wind howled louder, and somewhere in that sound she thought she heard laughter. Mean, mocking laughter that said she'd been a fool to think she could outrun her past, to think she deserved a new beginning. But then, something else. Lena lifted her head, ice cracking off her eyelashes. Through the swirling white, through the darkness and the storm, she saw it. A shape. Square and solid and impossibly, miraculously real. A cabin. She blinked hard, convinced it was a hallucination. The cold did that, didn't it? Made you see things that weren't there. Made you believe in rescue right before it killed you. But when she opened her eyes again, the cabin was still there. Maybe 100 yards away. Might as well have been 100 miles for all the strength she had left. Move, she told herself. Move or die. She crawled. It wasn't dignified. It wasn't brave. But she dug her frozen fingers into the snow and dragged herself forward, inch by miserable inch. Her breath came in ragged gasps that burned her lungs. Her vision blurred, refocused, blurred again. 50 yards, 30, 20. The cabin had a porch. She could see it now, rough-cut timber, snow piled halfway up the door. There was a light in the window, a real, honest-to-God light that meant someone was home. Someone was alive in there. Someone who might what? Save her? Lena had stopped believing in saviors around the same time she stopped believing in justice. But she didn't have any other options. She reached the porch steps, 3 of them, buried in snow, and pulled herself up. Her hands were so numb she couldn't tell if she was actually gripping anything. She might have been clawing at ice and just imagining the wood beneath her fingers. The door was right there. Right there. She lifted her arm. It weighed 1,000 pounds. She made a fist, or something close to it, and knocked. The sound was pathetic, barely audible over the storm. She knocked again, harder, using the last bit of strength she had. Then her arm fell to her side and she slumped against the doorframe, breathing in short, shallow gasps that might have been sobs or might have just been her body shutting down. Please, she thought, please, please, please. The door opened. Lena pitched forward, would have fallen flat if something hadn't caught her. Strong hands, very strong hands. She had a confused impression of size. Whoever this was, he was big, before her knees gave out completely. Jesus Christ. A man's voice, rough and startled. Where the hell did you... She tried to answer, but her mouth wouldn't form words. Everything was spinning, and she couldn't tell if she was standing or falling or, Hey, stay with me! The hands tightened, holding her upright. Don't you pass out. Not yet. Lena's eyes rolled back. The last thing she registered was warmth. Blessed, impossible warmth washing over her as the man pulled her inside and kicked the door shut against the storm. Then, nothing. She woke up in stages. First came sensation, heat. She was warm, actually warm, not the false warmth of dying. She'd read about that, how hypothermia made you feel hot right before the end, but real heat soaking into her skin, her muscles, chasing away the deep cold that had settled in her bones. Second came pain. Oh God, the pain. Her hands and feet burned like they were on fire, 1,000 needles stabbing all at once as circulation returned. She gasped, tried to curl up around the sensation, and realized she couldn't move. She was wrapped in something. Blankets. Heavy ones, tucked tight around her. Third came awareness. She wasn't alone. Lena's eyes snapped open. The cabin was small, 1 room, maybe 15 feet square. A stone fireplace dominated the far wall, flames crackling cheerfully behind an iron grate. Rough furniture, a table, 2 chairs, a narrow bed shoved into the corner. Supplies stacked neatly against the walls. Flour sacks, crates, what looked like traps hanging from hooks. The kind of place a man lived when he didn't want company. And there he was, sitting in one of the chairs maybe 6 feet away, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. He was big. That was the first thing that registered. Broad shoulders, long legs stretched out in front of him, hands that looked like they could break a man's neck without much effort. Dark hair, a little too long, shot through with premature gray at the temples. A face that might have been handsome once, before life and weather and something harder left their marks. A scar cut through his left eyebrow, another along his jaw. His eyes were the color of winter storms, gray and cold and watchful. He wore a simple wool shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and marked with old scars. Working hands, fighting hands. A man who'd seen trouble and probably caused his share of it. Lena's heart kicked hard against her ribs. You back? His voice matched the rest of him. Rough, low, careful. She tried to speak, but her throat was raw. She coughed instead, harsh and painful. Without a word, the man stood, crossed to the fireplace, and ladled something from a pot hanging over the fire. He brought it to her, a tin cup filled with broth that smelled like heaven. Can you sit? Lena nodded, though she wasn't sure it was true. He slid one arm behind her shoulders and lifted her like she weighed nothing, propping her up against the wall. The blankets fell away slightly, and she realized with a jolt that she was wearing a shirt, a man's shirt, way too big for her, and nothing else. Her face went hot. My clothes, soaked through. You were freezing to death. He held the cup to her lips. Drink. She wanted to argue, wanted to protest the indignity of it all, but the broth touched her tongue and her body took over. She drank greedily, burning her mouth, not caring. When the cup was empty, he set it aside and settled back in his chair, putting distance between them again. They studied each other in silence. "You got a name?" he asked finally. Lena Whitaker." He nodded once, like that confirmed something. "Cole Maddox." "Thank you," she whispered, for pulling me in. Thought I was, yeah." He cut her off, not unkindly. "I know." More silence. The fire popped and hissed. Outside, the wind screamed. "Storm's not letting up," Cole said. "Probably won't for a few days. You're stuck here." The words hung between them. A statement of fact, not an invitation. Lena swallowed hard. "I can pay you for the food, the shelter. I have a little money." "Don't want your money." "Then what?" "Don't want anything." His eyes met hers, steady and unreadable. "You needed help." "I helped, that's all." She didn't believe that. People always wanted something, always had an angle, a price, a condition attached to their kindness. That's what Philadelphia had taught her. That's what the wagon train had taught her. But looking at Cole Maddox, at the careful way he kept his distance, at the tension in his shoulders that said he wasn't any happier about this situation than she was, Lena started to wonder if maybe, just maybe, he was telling the truth. Or maybe he was just better at hiding what he wanted. "Where were you headed?" Cole asked. "Red Hollow. I'm supposed to start teaching there." She laughed, a bitter sound. "If I ever make it." "You will. Once the storm breaks." Such simple certainty. Like surviving was just a matter of waiting it out. Lena pulled the blankets tighter. "The wagon train left me. The storm was coming, and they said my wagon was too slow, that they'd come back after. They didn't." Cole's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "People do that." "You say that like it doesn't bother you." "Bothering me won't change what they did." He stood, moved to the window, looked out at the wall of white beyond the glass. "You're alive. That's what matters." Was it? Lena wasn't so sure anymore. Being alive hurt. Being alive meant facing tomorrow and the day after, and all the days beyond that with nothing but questions and fear and the knowledge that she was completely alone. Well, not completely alone. Not right now. She looked at Cole's back, at the rigid line of his spine, at the way he held himself like a man expecting trouble. A man who'd learned not to trust easily. A man a lot like her, maybe. "How long have you lived out here?" she asked. "Few years." "By yourself?" "Yeah." "Don't you get lonely?" He turned then, and for just a second his guard dropped. She saw something raw in his face, something that looked like pain or regret, or maybe just bone-deep weariness. Then it was gone, hidden behind walls so high she wondered if anyone had ever scaled them. "Cold'll kill you faster than loneliness," he said. "Get some rest. You need it." It wasn't a suggestion. Lena lay back down, her body still aching, still burning with returning circulation. She listened to Cole move around the cabin, checking the fire, securing the door, doing whatever needed doing. Efficient, quiet. A man used to being alone. The storm howled outside. Inside, the fire crackled. And Lena Whitaker, who'd stopped believing in rescue, fell asleep in a stranger's cabin with no idea if she'd just been saved or walked into something worse. She woke to the smell of coffee. Real coffee, strong and dark and almost sinfully good. Lena's eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the dim light. The storm was still raging. She could hear it battering the cabin walls, but inside was warm, safe, for now. Cole stood at the stove, his back to her, doing something with a pan. Cooking, she realized. Making breakfast. Lena pushed herself upright, wincing as her muscles protested. Everything hurt. Her feet especially. They felt swollen, tender, like she'd run barefoot across broken glass. "Don't move too fast," Cole said, without turning around. "Frostbite's setting in on your toes. Not bad, but you'll need to take it easy." "I need to—" She stopped. What did she need? To use the outhouse? To get dressed? To figure out what the hell happened next? Cole seemed to read her mind. Chamber pots under the bed. Your clothes are drying by the fire. They'll be ready in an hour or so. The matter-of-fact way he said it, like he'd done this before, taken care of someone, managed a crisis, should have been comforting. Instead, it made Lena's skin prickle with awareness. Who was this man? What kind of life had he lived that made him so calm about finding a half-dead woman on his doorstep? She started to swing her legs out of bed, then remembered she was wearing only his shirt. Her cheeks burned. Cole glanced over his shoulder, caught her hesitation, and turned his back deliberately. I'll step outside, give you some privacy. In the storm? Porch is covered. I'll be fine. He grabbed his coat and was gone before she could protest, the door closing behind him with a solid thunk. Lena moved quickly, fumbling with the chamber pot, trying not to think too hard about the indignity of it all. When she was done, she pulled the blankets around herself and called out. Cole came back in, snow-dusting his shoulders, and went straight to the stove without looking at her. He dished up 2 plates, beans and salt pork and something that might have been cornbread, and set one on the small table. Can you walk? Lena tested her weight on her feet. Pain shot up her legs, sharp enough to make her gasp, but she could stand. Barely. I'll manage. She limped to the table and sank into the chair. Cole took the other seat and they ate in silence. The food was simple, plain, probably not enough salt, but it tasted better than anything Lena had eaten in weeks. She cleaned her plate, then looked up to find Cole watching her again with that unreadable expression. What? She asked, defensive. Nothing. Just, when's the last time you ate? I don't know, 2 days ago? Maybe 3. He nodded slowly, like that explained something. Then he stood, cut another piece of cornbread, and dropped it on her plate without comment. The gesture, small, quiet, completely unexpected, made Lena's throat tighten. Thank you, she whispered. Cole just shrugged and went back to his own food. They finished eating. Cole cleared the plates, washed them in a basin with practiced efficiency. Lena sat at the table, feeling useless, watching him move around the small space. Every motion was controlled, deliberate. Nothing wasted. A man who'd learned to survive alone and liked it that way. I should help, she said. You should rest. I don't want to be a burden. Then don't be. He dried the last plate, set it on the shelf. But you're not doing anyone any good if you push yourself too hard and end up worse off. Logic, hard, practical logic that left no room for pride or argument. Lena hated that he was right. She moved back to the bed, slowly, carefully, and sat down. Her clothes were draped over a chair near the fire, steam still rising off the fabric. The dress was ruined. She could see that now. Torn at the hem, stained with mud, and God knew what else. But it was all she had. How long do you think the storm will last? She asked. Cole glanced at the window. 3 days, maybe 4. And then? Then I'll take you to Red Hollow. You don't have to do that. Yeah, I do. He met her eyes. You won't make it on your own. Not after this. The truth of it stung, but Lena couldn't argue. She'd barely survived 1 day in the storm. Another attempt would kill her. What do we do until then? She asked. Wait. Waiting turned out to be harder than walking through a blizzard. The first day passed slowly. Cole kept the fire going, checked her feet for worsening frostbite, his hands surprisingly gentle despite their size, and mostly kept to himself. He sat by the window a lot, watching the storm, his expression distant, thinking about things he didn't share. Lena tried to occupy herself. She offered to help with chores, but there wasn't much to do. The cabin was small, organized, everything in its place. Cole ran a tight ship. He didn't need help, didn't need company, didn't need anything, which made her presence feel even more intrusive. By the second day, the silence was driving her crazy. Do you ever talk? She asked over breakfast. Cole looked up from his coffee. I'm talking now. I mean really talk. About yourself, your life. Not much to tell. Everyone has something to tell. His jaw tightened. Maybe I don't feel like telling it. The sharpness in his voice made Lena pull back. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to pry. Then don't. They ate the rest of the meal in tense silence. Afterward, Cole grabbed his coat and headed for the door. Where are you going? Lena asked. Check the horses. In this storm? They need tending. He pulled on his gloves. I'll be back. He was gone for nearly an hour. When he returned, snow-covered and shivering, Lena had coffee waiting, hot and strong, the way she'd seen him make it. Cole took the cup without a word, wrapped his hands around it, let the heat seep in. "Thank you," he said finally. It was the first voluntary kindness either of them had offered the other. Something shifted after that. Not much, just a crack in the ice. That afternoon, Lena asked about the traps hanging on the wall, and Cole actually answered. Told her about running a trap line, about selling pelts in Red Hollow twice a year, about how the work kept him fed through the winter. The next morning, she helped him cook breakfast. He didn't tell her to rest, didn't send her back to bed, just made room at the stove and let her work. Small things. Tiny moments of cooperation that felt bigger than they were. By the third day, they'd developed a rhythm. Cole handled the heavy work, splitting wood, tending the animals, maintaining the cabin. Lena took care of the cooking, the mending, the small domestic tasks that made life bearable. They worked in parallel, speaking only when necessary, but the silence wasn't hostile anymore. It was almost comfortable. That evening, after dinner, Lena sat by the fire with a book she'd found on Cole's shelf, a battered copy of Shakespeare's sonnets, pages yellowed with age. "You read?" she asked, surprised. Cole glanced over from where he was cleaning his rifle. "Some." "Shakespeare?" "My mother's. Only thing I kept after she died." The admission surprised her. Cole didn't talk about his past, didn't offer personal details. The fact that he'd just shared something real felt significant. "My mother loved poetry too," Lena said softly. "She used to read to me every night, Wordsworth mostly. She said it helped her remember that beauty existed even when life was hard." "Did it work?" "I don't know. She died when I was 12, so—" Lena shrugged. "I guess I'll never know if she really believed it." Cole set down the rifle. "You don't think she did?" "I think she wanted to. I think she tried. But wanting something and having it are different things." "Yeah." Cole's voice went quiet. "They are." They sat in silence for a while, the fire crackling between them. Outside, the storm was finally starting to ease. The wind had died down and the snow fell softer now, gentler. "It's almost over," Lena said. "Yeah." "Then what?" Cole looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since he'd pulled her out of the storm. "Then I take you to Red Hollow. You start your new life. Forget any of this happened. Is that what you want? For me to forget?" "What I want doesn't matter. It matters to me." The words hung between them, heavier than they should have been. Cole's eyes darkened, something complicated moving behind them. He opened his mouth, closed it, then stood abruptly. "I'm going to check the horses." "You checked them an hour ago." "Then I'll check them again." He grabbed his coat and was gone before she could say anything else. The door slamming behind him hard enough to rattle the walls. Lena sat alone by the fire, her heart beating too fast, her mind racing. What was happening here? What was she doing? Pushing him, asking questions she had no right to ask. She should be grateful. She should keep her distance, mind her business, and leave as soon as the storm broke. But something about Cole Maddox made that impossible. Something about the way he looked at her sometimes, like he was afraid of her, or afraid of himself, or afraid of what might happen if they stopped pretending this was just a simple rescue. When Cole came back an hour later, they didn't speak, didn't acknowledge the tension crackling between them. They just went to bed on opposite sides of the cabin, lying awake in the dark, listening to each other breathe and pretending tomorrow wouldn't change everything. The storm broke on the fourth day. Lena woke to silence. Not the howling wind she'd grown used to, but actual profound silence. She sat up, heart pounding, and looked toward the window. Sunlight. Clear, brilliant sunlight streaming through the glass. It was over. Cole was already up, standing by the stove, coffee in hand. He didn't look at her. "Storm's done," he said. "We can leave tomorrow morning. Tomorrow." One more day, and she'd be gone. Back to the world. Back to her plans. Back to being alone. "Okay," Lena said. They went through the motions of the day. Breakfast, chores. Cole went outside to dig out the path, to check on the horses, to prepare for the journey. Lena packed her few belongings, the ruined dress, the shoes that had almost killed her, the small bag of money she'd sewn into her petticoat. Everything she owned in the world fit in a single satchel. By evening, the cabin felt different, temporary. like a place she was already leaving behind. They ate dinner in near silence. Afterward, Cole sat by the fire, staring into the flames. Lena sat at the table, pretending to read, but mostly just watching him. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. Cole didn't look up. "Depends. Why do you live out here? Alone?" For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, "Because it's easier." "Easier than what?" "Than being around people, than pretending I'm something I'm not." Lena set down her book. "What are you?" Cole's hands tightened on his knees. "Someone who doesn't deserve company." The words were quiet, almost bitter, like a confession he'd been holding on to for years. "I don't believe that," Lena said. "You don't know me. I know you saved my life. I know you've taken care of me for 4 days without asking for anything in return. I know you're kind, even when you don't want to be. Kindness doesn't erase the past." "No, but it counts for something." Cole finally looked at her, and the pain in his eyes was so raw it took her breath away. "You think that," he said, "but you're wrong. The things I've done, the man I was, it doesn't go away just because I hide out here and pretend it never happened." "Then stop pretending." "What?" Lena stood, crossed to where he sat. "Stop pretending. Stop hiding. Whatever you did, whatever you were, it's done. You can't change it. But you can choose who you are now. Who you want to be." Cole shook his head. "It's not that simple." "Yes, it is. You just don't want it to be." He stared at her, jaw tight, eyes stormy with emotions he couldn't quite name. Then he stood abruptly, towering over her, close enough that she could feel the heat coming off him. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said, voice rough. "Then tell me. Help me understand." "Why? What difference does it make?" "Because—" Lena stopped, her own heart hammering. Because why? Because she cared? Because 4 days with this broken, guarded man had somehow mattered more than months with people who were supposed to be her friends? Because looking at Cole Maddox felt like looking in a mirror and seeing all her own fears and failures reflected back? "Because I think you are worth knowing," she whispered. Cole's breath caught. For one impossible moment, she thought he might tell her everything, might let down the walls and show her who he really was. Instead, he stepped back. "You should get some sleep," he said. "Long ride tomorrow." And just like that, the moment shattered. Lena nodded, swallowing past the lump in her throat. Right, of course. She went to bed, pulled the blankets over herself, and listened to Cole move around the cabin. Heard him bank the fire, check the door, settle into his chair for another sleepless night. In the darkness, she let herself cry, quiet tears that she wiped away before they could fall. Tomorrow, she'd leave. Tomorrow, she'd go to Red Hollow and start her new life and forget all about the man who'd saved her and then pushed her away. Tomorrow. But tonight, she let herself hurt. Morning came too soon. They ate breakfast in silence. Cole saddled his horse, a big roan gelding with kind eyes, and helped Lena mount up. She sat awkwardly, unused to riding, and Cole swung up behind her without asking permission. "Town's 6 miles south," he said. "We'll be there by noon." Lena nodded, not trusting her voice. They rode. The world was white and clean, scrubbed fresh by the storm. Snow sparkled under the bright sun, and the air was so cold it hurt to breathe. But the sky was clear, and the trail was visible, and for the first time in days, Lena could see beyond the next 5 feet. Cole kept the horse at a steady walk. One arm stayed around Lena's waist, holding her secure, and she tried not to think about how right it felt, how safe, how temporary. After an hour, buildings appeared on the horizon. Red Hollow, a frontier town like a dozen others, rough wooden structures, a main street churned to mud, people bundled against the cold. Civilization. Lena should have been relieved. Instead, she felt something close to dread. Cole guided the horse down the main street, past the general store, past the saloon. People stared. Of course they did. A lone man riding in with a woman, both looking like they'd been through hell. Let them stare. Lena didn't care. They stopped in front of a 2-story building with a sign that read, "Boarding House." "This is the place," Cole said. "Mrs. Henderson runs it. She'll get you settled." He dismounted, then helped Lena down. Her legs nearly gave out, hours of riding after days in bed, but Cole caught her, steadied her. For a moment, they stood there, close enough to touch, neither one moving. "Thank you," Lena said, "for everything." Cole's jaw worked. "You're welcome. Will I—" She stopped, hating how small her voice sounded. "Will I see you again?" Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, regret, a dozen things he wouldn't say. "Maybe," he lied. Lena nodded, blinking back tears. "Right, maybe." She turned toward the boarding house, toward her new life, toward everything she'd come here to find. Behind her, Cole mounted his horse. Lena made it 3 steps before she stopped, before she turned back, before she saw him watching her with an expression that broke her heart. "Cole?" The door to the saloon burst open. A man stepped out, tall, well-dressed, with the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. He looked at Cole, and something shifted in his face. Recognition. And something darker. "Well, well," the man said, voice smooth as silk. "Cole Maddox, didn't expect to see you here." Cole went absolutely still. The kind of still that meant trouble. "Victor," he said, voice flat. Victor Hale smiled wider. "Thought you'd disappeared for good. Guess I was wrong." "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted. What you owe me." The air between them crackled with tension so thick Lena could taste it. "I don't owe you anything," Cole said. "That's not how I remember it." Victor's eyes flicked to Lena, then back to Cole. "Got yourself a woman now? Interesting. Didn't think you were the settling type. Leave her out of this." "Oh, I intend to. As long as you and I come to an understanding." Cole's hand drifted toward the gun on his hip. "We got nothing to talk about." "I disagree." Victor stepped closer, casual and confident. "See? You made some promises a long time ago, broke them, left a lot of good men hanging, and now it's time to pay up." Around them the street had gone quiet, people watching, waiting. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. The past Cole had been running from, the reason he lived alone in the wilderness, the thing he couldn't escape no matter how far he ran, and she was standing right in the middle of it. "You got 24 hours, Victor said. "Meet me tomorrow at sunset, alone, or I start making things very difficult for everyone in this town." He tipped his hat to Lena, smiled that cold smile, and walked away like he owned the world. Cole stood frozen, every muscle locked tight. Lena moved to his side. "Cole, go inside." His voice was hard, empty. "Get yourself settled. Stay away from me." "I'm not—" "I mean it, Lena." He finally looked at her, and his eyes were full of something that looked like fear. "This isn't your fight. Don't make it yours." Before she could argue, he mounted his horse and rode off, leaving her standing alone in the middle of Red Hollow, with her heart in her throat and the terrible certainty that everything was about to fall apart. The storm was over. But the real danger? It was just beginning. Mrs. Henderson's boarding house smelled like lye soap and old wood. The woman herself was in her 50s, gray-haired and sharp-eyed, with the kind of face that had seen everything twice and wasn't impressed either time. "You're the new teacher," she said, looking Lena up and down. Not a question, a statement. "Yes, ma'am." Lena Whitaker. "Rooms upstairs, second door on the left. Meals are at 7, noon, and 6. You miss them, you go hungry. Rent's due every Friday. No men allowed past the parlor. No drinking, no gambling, no loud noises after 9. Mrs. Henderson handed her a key. "Questions?" Lena shook her head, still rattled from what had just happened in the street. "Good. Welcome to Red Hollow." The older woman turned away, then paused. "That man who brought you in, Cole Maddox, you'd do well to stay away from him." "Why?" Mrs. Henderson's mouth thinned. "Because men like that bring trouble. Always have, always will. Now get settled. School starts Monday, and you'll need to meet the town council tomorrow afternoon." She disappeared into the kitchen, leaving Lena standing in the narrow hallway with her pathetic satchel and 1,000 questions burning in her throat. The room upstairs was small but clean. A narrow bed, a washstand, a chair by the window. Better than the cabin, technically. More civilized. More proper. It felt empty. Lena set her bag down and moved to the window. From here she could see most of Main Street. The saloon where Victor Hale had appeared. The general store. The church at the far end with its white steeple pointing at the sky like an accusation. No sign of Cole, She pressed her forehead against the cold glass and tried to make sense of what had just happened. Victor Hale. The way he'd looked at Cole, like a cat cornering a mouse. The threat wrapped in silk. 24 hours. What had Cole done? What kind of past was bad enough to make a man hide in the wilderness for years? And why did she care so much? 4 days. That's all they'd had. 4 days in a cabin during a storm, and somehow it had been enough to make her feel something she had no business feeling. Something that made her chest ache and her hands shake and her common sense scream at her to let it go. Cole had saved her life. That was all. She owed him gratitude, nothing more. Except it didn't feel like nothing. It felt like everything. Lena turned away from the window and unpacked her bag. The ruined dress went on the chair. Her few personal items, a hairbrush, a small mirror, the book of poetry she'd bought in Philadelphia, went on the washstand. She changed into the only other dress she owned, a plain brown thing that made her look like a Quaker, and tried to convince herself that tomorrow would be better, that she could start fresh here, that Cole Maddox and his ghosts weren't her problem. She almost believed it. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay in the narrow bed, listening to the sounds of the boarding house settling around her. Footsteps above, voices below, the creak of old timber adjusting to the cold, and underneath it all, a question that wouldn't let her rest. What was she going to do? The smart thing would be to mind her business. Show up for the town council meeting, start teaching, build the life she'd come here to build. Forget about Cole. Forget about the storm. Forget about the way he'd looked at her right before Victor Hale appeared. But Lena had never been good at doing the smart thing. If she had at yes, she wouldn't have stayed late to help that student in Philadelphia, wouldn't have put herself in a position where lies could destroy her, wouldn't have trusted Henry Watts and the wagon train, wouldn't have knocked on a stranger's door in a blizzard. Maybe that was her problem. Maybe she kept making the same mistake over and over, trusting people who didn't deserve it, caring about things that weren't hers to care about. Or maybe, and this scared her more, maybe she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Morning came with pale sunlight and the smell of bacon drifting up from the kitchen. Lena dressed, braided her hair, and went downstairs to face whatever came next. The dining room held 3 other boarders. 2 men, miners by the look of them, rough and weathered, and a woman about Lena's age with tired eyes and calloused hands. A seamstress, Lena guessed, or a laundress, someone who worked hard for little pay and knew better than to complain. They nodded at her but didn't speak. Mrs. Henderson brought out plates of eggs and bacon and biscuits that were somehow both burnt and underdone. Lena ate without tasting anything. After breakfast, she had nowhere to go and nothing to do until the town council meeting at 2. She considered exploring Red Hollow, but the thought of walking those streets alone, of facing curious stares and whispered questions, made her stomach turn. Instead, she sat in the parlor with a book she couldn't focus on and watched the clock tick toward afternoon. At 1:30, Mrs. Henderson appeared in the doorway. "Time to go. Council meets at the church." "You're coming with me? Someone's got to introduce you proper. Can't have you wandering in like a stray dog." The word stung, but Lena swallowed her pride and followed the older woman into the cold. Red Hollow looked different in daylight. Smaller, rougher. The kind of place where people came to disappear or start over or just survive another winter. The main street was churned mud, frozen solid now, treacherous underfoot. Buildings leaned slightly, like they were tired of standing. A dog barked somewhere. A woman hurried past with her head down, clutching a shawl tight. No one smiled. The church sat at the end of the street, white paint peeling, steps worn smooth by years of boots. Inside, it was cold enough that Lena could see her breath. 5 men waited near the pulpit. 4 of them looked like every town council she'd ever imagined. Middle-aged, well-fed, wearing expressions of self-importance that came from being slightly more powerful than their neighbors. The 5th man was younger, maybe 30, with kind eyes and a nervous smile. "Gentlemen," Mrs. Henderson said, "this is Miss Lena Whitaker, your new teacher." The oldest of the men, gray beard, expensive coat, stepped forward. "Vernon Price, mayor of Red Hollow." He didn't offer his hand. "We received your application 3 months ago. References were adequate." Adequate. Like she should be grateful they'd hired her at all. "Thank you for the opportunity," Lena said, keeping her voice level. "You understand the position? Teaching children ages 6 to 14. Reading, writing, arithmetic, basic history. Nothing fancy. I understand. Good. Vernon looked her up and down like he was assessing livestock. School starts Monday, 8 to 3, 6 days a week. You'll have about 20 students, give or take. Some of them are difficult. Their parents send them because the law says they have to, not because they want education. I can handle difficult. We'll see. He turned to the younger man. Thomas will show you the schoolhouse. Make sure everything's in order. Thomas stepped forward, relief clear on his face. Happy to, Mayor, Miss Whitaker. If you'll follow me? Lena nodded, grateful to escape Vernon's cold appraisal. She followed Thomas out of the church and down a side street. Don't mind the mayor, Thomas said quietly. He's like that with everyone. Thinks being unpleasant makes him seem important. Does it work? Not really, but he owns half the town, so we put up with it. Thomas glanced at her. I'm Thomas Green, by the way. I run the general store. Nice to meet you. Likewise. We've been without a teacher for almost a year, the last one. Well, she didn't last long. What happened? Thomas hesitated. She left. Said the town was too rough, the children too wild. Between you and me, I think she just didn't like being this far from civilization. They turned a corner, and there it was. The schoolhouse. A small square building with a crooked chimney and windows that probably leaked. Paint faded to the point where Lena couldn't tell what color it had been originally. Inside was worse. Dust coated everything. 3 rows of benches, most of them broken or missing pieces. A teacher's desk that leaned heavily to one side. A chalkboard so scratched and stained it was barely usable. In the corner, a potbelly stove sat cold and empty. Lena's heart sank. I know it's not much, Thomas said, sounding apologetic. But the town will provide firewood and chalk. And if you need supplies, slates, primers, anything like that, just let me know. We'll figure something out. It's fine, Lena lied. I can work with this. Thomas smiled, clearly relieved. You're tougher than you look, Miss Whitaker. I've had to be. They spent the next hour going through the building. Thomas showed her where supplies were stored, what little existed. He explained which families to expect trouble from, which children had learning difficulties, which parents would complain no matter what she did. By the time they finished, Lena's head was spinning. One more thing, Thomas said as they stepped back outside. About Cole Maddox. Lena's pulse jumped. What about him? Word's already spreading that he brought you to town, that you stayed with him during the storm. Thomas looked uncomfortable. People are going to talk, ask questions. It might be best if you distance yourself. Cole's got a reputation. For what? For being dangerous, for having a past he doesn't talk about. Most folks leave him alone, and he returns the favor. But now Victor Hale's shown up and he trailed off. Just be careful, that's all I'm saying. Victor Hale, who is he? Thomas's expression darkened. Trouble. The worst kind. He showed up yesterday asking questions about Cole, and nothing good ever comes from men like that. What does he want? I don't know, but whatever it is, it's going to end badly. Thomas met her eyes. Stay out of it, Miss Whitaker. Please. You're here to teach, not get caught up in someone else's war. Lena nodded, even though every instinct she had screamed at her to do exactly the opposite. After Thomas left, she walked back to the boarding house slowly, her mind racing. Victor Hale was trouble. Cole was dangerous. Everyone wanted her to stay away, which only made her more determined to understand what was happening. She found her answer sooner than expected. That evening, after another silent dinner, Lena sat in the parlor pretending to read. The other boarders had gone to their rooms. Mrs. Henderson was in the kitchen, clattering dishes with aggressive efficiency. Someone knocked on the front door. Lena heard Mrs. Henderson answer it, heard a low male voice, heard the older woman's sharp reply. She doesn't want visitors. Please, just 5 minutes. Lena's breath caught. She knew that voice. She was on her feet and in the hallway before she could think better of it. It's all right, Mrs. Henderson. I'll talk to him. The older woman's face hardened. I don't allow men in the parlor after dinner. Then we'll talk on the porch. Miss Whitaker. 5 minutes, that's all. Mrs. Henderson looked like she wanted to argue, but something in Lena's expression stopped her. She stepped aside, radiating disapproval, and let Cole in just far enough to close the door against the cold. They stood in the narrow entryway, close enough that Lena could see the tension in his shoulders, the exhaustion in his eyes. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. "I know." "Then why are you?" Cole's jaw worked. "I wanted to make sure you were all right, that you got settled." "I'm fine." "Good. That's good." He looked like he wanted to say more, but couldn't find the words. Finally, "I also wanted to apologize for earlier, for dragging you into this. You didn't drag me anywhere. I chose to be there. You didn't choose to have Victor Hale see you with me. That was my fault." "Cole, he's dangerous, Lena, more dangerous than you know. If he thinks you matter to me, if he thinks he can use you to get what he wants." Cole stopped, ran a hand through his hair. "You need to stay away from me, from all of this." "What does he want?" "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me." "Why?" The question came out harsh, almost angry. "Why do you care?" "Because you saved my life. Because you took care of me when you didn't have to. Because 4 days with you felt more real than anything I've experienced in years. Because you're not the villain everyone thinks you are," Lena said instead. Cole laughed, a bitter sound with no humor in it. "You don't know that." "Then tell me. Tell me what Victor wants. Tell me what you did that's so terrible you have to hide from it." For a moment, she thought he might actually do it. Thought he might let down his guard and show her the truth. But then his expression closed off, walls slamming back into place. "I can't. Can't or won't. Does it matter?" "Yes," Lena said. "It does." They stared at each other, the air between them crackling with frustration and something deeper, something neither of them wanted to name. Mrs. Henderson appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Time's up, Miss Whitaker." Cole stepped back. "She's right. I should go." "Cole, goodbye, Lena." He was out the door before she could stop him, disappearing into the dark like a ghost. Lena stood in the entryway, hands shaking, heart hammering. Mrs. Henderson watched her with an expression that might have been pity or might have been contempt. "I warned you," the older woman said. "Men like that don't change. They just find new ways to break things." Lena didn't answer. She went upstairs to her room, closed the door, and sat on the bed with her head in her hands. 2 days in Red Hollow, and she was already making a mess of everything. The next morning, Lena went to the schoolhouse early. She swept the floors, scrubbed the desks, did everything she could to make the place feel less like an abandoned ruin and more like somewhere children might actually want to learn. It was exhausting work and exactly what she needed. Physical labor that kept her hands busy and her mind from spiraling. She was wrestling with the broken bench when someone cleared their throat behind her. Lena spun around. A woman stood in the doorway. 30-something, blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun, wearing a dress that probably cost more than Lena made in a month. Everything about her screamed money and status. "Miss Whitaker?" The woman's voice was cultured, educated. East Coast, Lena guessed. Boston or New York. "Yes?" "I'm Caroline Price, the mayor's wife." She stepped inside, looking around with barely concealed distaste. "I wanted to welcome you to Red Hollow personally." Lena wiped her dusty hands on her skirt. "That's kind of you." "I also wanted to give you some advice." Woman to woman. Caroline's smile didn't reach her eyes. "This town can be difficult, especially for someone like you." "Someone like me?" "An outsider. A woman alone. Someone who doesn't understand how things work here." Caroline moved closer. "I heard about your arrival, about Cole Maddox bringing you in." Of course she had. Gossip traveled faster than disease in small towns. "He helped me during the storm," Lena said carefully. "That's all." "Is it? Because the way some people tell it, you spent several days alone with him in his cabin." Heat rushed to Lena's face. "I was freezing to death. He saved my life." "I'm sure he did. Cole has always been heroic in his way." Caroline's tone made it clear what she thought of that heroism. "But you should know what you're dealing with. Cole Maddox isn't some noble frontier hero. He's a criminal." The word landed like a slap. "What?" "Oh, he's never been convicted of anything, not officially, but everyone knows he used to ride with outlaws, bank robberies, stagecoach holdups, who knows what else. Then one day he just disappeared, hid himself away in the wilderness like a coward." Caroline studied her nails. Now Victor Hale has come looking for him, and whatever happens next, it won't be pleasant. My advice? Stay far away. Focus on your job. Don't get involved in things that aren't your concern. Lena's hands clenched into fists. Is that all? Not quite. I also wanted to remind you that teaching is a position of moral authority. The parents in this town expect their children's teacher to be above reproach. Any hint of impropriety, any suggestion that you're associating with undesirable elements, and you'll find yourself without a job very quickly. The threat was clear. Step out of line, and Caroline Price would make sure Lena lost everything. Again. I understand, Lena said, keeping her voice level with effort. Good. I'm glad we had this talk. Caroline turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and one more thing. The spring social is in 6 weeks. As the teacher, you'll be expected to attend. I'll introduce you to the right people, help you make the right connections, as long as you remember where you stand. She left in a rustle of expensive fabric, leaving Lena alone with her anger and her fear. Criminal, outlaw, bank robberies. Was it true? Had Cole really done those things? And if he had, did it change how she felt? Lena sat down on one of the broken benches and tried to sort through her emotions. She should be horrified, should be grateful for Caroline's warning, should take the easy path and forget Cole Maddox ever existed. But all she could think about was the gentle way he'd checked her feet for frostbite, the quiet care he'd shown her, the pain in his eyes when he'd said he didn't deserve company. People weren't just one thing. They weren't just their worst moments or their biggest mistakes. They were complicated, contradictory, capable of both harm and healing. Lena knew that better than anyone. She'd been judged for something she didn't do, condemned without a trial, run out of town by people who didn't care about the truth. How could she turn around and do the same thing to Cole? But Caroline was right about one thing. Getting involved was dangerous. Lena had a job here, a chance to rebuild her life. She couldn't throw it away for a man she barely knew, even if that man had saved her life, even if she couldn't stop thinking about him. The rest of the day passed in a blur of work. By late afternoon, the schoolhouse looked almost presentable. The desks were clean, the floor swept, the stove ready for Monday's fire. Lena had even found some old primers in a cupboard, water-damaged and missing pages, but better than nothing. She was locking up when she heard shouting. It came from the direction of the saloon. Male voices, angry and getting louder. Lena's first instinct was to go back to the boarding house. Mind her business. Stay safe. Instead, she found herself walking toward the noise. A crowd had gathered outside the saloon, 20 people, maybe more, forming a rough circle around 2 men in the street. Cole and Victor Hale. Lena's heart stopped. Don't owe you a damn thing, Cole was saying, voice hard as iron. Victor smiled. That's where you're wrong. You owe me 5 years and $40,000, give or take. I left the gang. That cancels any debt. You didn't leave. You ran. Like a coward. Victor's voice carried across the crowd. Left us to deal with the law while you hid in the woods. Good men died because of you, Maddox. You think I'm going to forget that? Cole's hands clenched. Those men knew the risks. We all did. Maybe. But you were the one who promised we'd all walk away rich. Then when things went bad, you disappeared and kept the money for yourself. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Lena saw the looks on people's faces. Shock, disgust, fear. Caroline Price stood near the front, her expression smug. Vernon Price beside her, arms crossed, watching like this was theater. I didn't keep anything, Cole said. The money burned when the bank caught fire. You know that. Do I? Victor spread his hands. All I know is you vanished, and $40,000 vanished with you. Seems like quite a coincidence. Believe what you want. I'm not giving you anything. Then I guess we have a problem. Victor's smile never wavered. See, I didn't come all this way to leave empty-handed, so here's what's going to happen. You've got until sunset tomorrow to give me what you owe. Cash, gold, whatever you've got. Or, he let the word hang. Or I start hurting people you care about. His eyes flicked to Lena. Cole went absolutely still. Leave her out of this. Hard to do that when you brought her to town yourself, when everyone saw you riding in together like you were something special. Victor took a step toward Cole. That's your weakness, Maddox. Always has been. You care too much. Makes you predictable. Touch her, and I'll kill you. The words were quiet, calm, absolutely serious. Victor laughed. There's the outlaw I remember, threatening murder over a woman you've known for what, a week? I mean it, Victor. So do I. Victor stepped back, addressing the crowd now. Everyone here should know what kind of man Cole Maddox really is. A thief, a liar. Someone who'll take your money and disappear when things get hard. Is that who you want living near your town? Near your families? More murmurs, louder now, angrier. Vernon Price stepped forward. Mr. Hale makes a good point. Perhaps it's time we discussed whether Cole Maddox is welcome in Red Hollow at all. Cole's expression went cold. I don't live in your town, Vernon. I live 6 miles north, on land I bought and paid for. You got no say in that. Maybe not, but we can make it clear that your business isn't welcome here. That you're not welcome here. Fine by me. I never wanted to be part of your damn town anyway. Cole turned to leave, and that's when Lena made her second terrible decision in as many days. She stepped out of the crowd. Wait! Every head turned toward her. Cole froze. Miss Whitaker, Vernon said, this doesn't concern you. It does if you're about to run a man out of town based on accusations and rumors. Lena's voice shook, but she kept going. I don't know Mr. Maddox's past. I don't know what he did or didn't do. But I know he saved my life when he didn't have to. I know he took care of me during the storm and asked for nothing in return. That's not the behavior of a thief or a coward. Caroline Price's eyes narrowed. This is exactly the kind of impropriety I warned you about. I'm speaking the truth. That's not impropriety. You're defending a criminal. I'm defending basic fairness. Or does that not matter anymore? The crowd shifted, uncertain now. Some faces showed agreement, others showed contempt. Victor Hale watched it all with obvious amusement. Well, the little teacher has some fire. I like that. He turned to Cole. You always did have a talent for finding women willing to believe your lies. Cole's jaw tightened. Lena, stop. You don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm saying that people deserve to be judged on who they are now, not who they used to be. Even if who they used to be was a monster? The question hung in the air. Cole stared at her, something broken in his eyes, like he was begging her to walk away before it was too late. Lena stared back. Everyone's done things they regret. That doesn't make them monsters. It makes them human. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Victor Hale started clapping, slow, mocking applause that made Lena's skin crawl. Beautiful, he said, Pooh. Truly touching. But it doesn't change the facts. Cole owes me, and one way or another, I'm collecting. He tipped his hat to the crowd. Sunset tomorrow. Don't disappoint me, Maddox. He walked away, his men following. The crowd began to disperse, people muttering to each other, shooting dark looks at both Cole and Lena. Vernon Price approached her. That was foolish, Miss Whitaker. Very foolish. The town council will be discussing your position at our next meeting. I spoke the truth. You spoke in defense of a known criminal. There's a difference. He walked away, Caroline at his side, both of them radiating cold disapproval. Thomas Green lingered nearby, looking torn. Miss Whitaker, I hope you know what you're doing. So do I, Lena whispered. Then it was just her and Cole, standing in the street while the sun sank toward the horizon. Cole turned to her, and his expression was something close to anguish. Why did you do that? Because it was right. Right? He laughed, harsh and painful. You just put a target on your back. Victor will use you now, use you to get to me. Then we'll deal with it. We? Cole stepped closer, voice dropping. There is no we, Lena. There can't be. You need to go back to the boarding house, lock your door, and forget you ever met me. I can't do that. Why not? Because I see you. Because underneath all the walls and the fear and the guilt, I see someone worth knowing, someone worth fighting for. Because I don't abandon people, Lena said instead. Not when they need help. Cole's control cracked. I don't need your help. I don't need your defense. I don't need... He stopped, closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were full of something that looked like despair. I don't deserve it. That's not your decision to make. Yes, it is. You don't know me, Lena. You don't know the things I've done, the people I've hurt. If you did, you'd run. Try me. No. Cole, no. He backed away. Stay away from me. Stay away from Victor. Go to your damn town council meeting and tell them whatever they want to hear. Keep your job, keep your life, just stay away. He left her standing there, alone again, with nothing but the wind and the dying light and the terrible certainty that she'd just made everything worse. Lena walked back to the boarding house in a daze. Mrs. Henderson met her at the door, face like stone. "Pack your things." Lena blinked. "What?" "You heard me. Pack your things and get out. I won't have someone like you under my roof." "Mrs. Henderson, please. Defending criminals in the street, making a spectacle of yourself, bringing shame on this house." The older woman's voice was cold. "You've got 1 hour. Then I'm changing the locks." The door slammed in her face. Lena stood on the porch, stunned. Less than 3 days in Red Hollow, and she'd already lost her home. Probably her job too, once the council met. She'd thrown away everything. For what? For a man who didn't want her help? For a principal that nobody cared about? Lena sat down on the steps and finally let herself cry. Not the quiet tears from the cabin, but real wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. She'd been so stupid, so naive, thinking she could start over, thinking she could do the right thing and have it matter. Nothing mattered. Nothing ever had. She was still crying when someone sat down beside her. Thomas Green held out a handkerchief. "You all right? I just lost my home. I heard. Mrs. Henderson's been itching to kick someone out for months. You just gave her an excuse." He paused. "But you didn't lose your job. Not yet, anyway." "The mayor said—" "The mayor says a lot of things. Doesn't mean the whole council agrees." Thomas offered a small smile. "You've got friends here, Miss Whitaker. Not many, but some. And for what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Even though it's probably going to cost me everything, sometimes the right thing does that." He stood, offered his hand. "Come on. I've got a room above the store. It's not much, but it's warm and dry. You can stay there until we figure something else out." Lena looked up at him through her tears. "Why are you helping me?" "Because someone should. And because Cole Maddox might be a lot of things, but you're right. He doesn't deserve to be run out of town without anyone standing up for him." Thomas pulled her to her feet. "Besides, this town could use someone willing to fight for what's right, even if it's messy." Lena let him lead her toward the general store, her mind still spinning, her heart still breaking. Behind them, the sun set over Red Hollow, painting the sky blood red. And somewhere out there, Cole Maddox was preparing to face his past alone, whether he wanted her help or not. The room above Thomas's store smelled like dried goods and dust. One small window looked out over Main Street, and a narrow bed sat against the far wall. Not much, but it was more than Lena deserved after the mess she'd made. She set her satchel down and moved to the window. Below, Red Hollow was settling in for the night. Lamps flickered in windows. Smoke rose from chimneys. Normal life continuing like the world hadn't just tilted sideways. "Thank you," she said without turning around. "For this. For everything." Thomas stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets. "Don't mention it. Just try to get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be difficult." "What happens tomorrow?" "Victor's deadline. Sunset." He paused. "Word is, he's brought 5 men with him, all armed, all loyal. If Cole doesn't give him what he wants, he'll start a fight. He'll start a war." Thomas moved closer, his voice dropping. "Miss Whitaker, Lena, I meant what I said earlier. I think you were brave to stand up for Cole, but brave doesn't always mean smart. These men, they're not playing games. People could die. Then someone needs to stop it. How? Cole won't accept help. He's made that clear. And the town won't lift a finger to defend him. Most folks think he deserves whatever's coming." Lena turned to face him. "Do you?" Thomas considered the question. "I think Cole's paid for his mistakes by living alone for 5 years. I think a man should be allowed to leave his past behind. But what I think doesn't matter much in Red Hollow. It matters to me." He smiled, sad and tired. "Get some sleep. We'll figure out what to do in the morning." After he left, Lena lay down on the narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. Sleep felt impossible. Her mind kept racing through the same terrible loop. Cole's face when she defended him. Victor's mocking smile. Vernon Price's threat. Mrs. Henderson slamming the door. She'd destroyed her fresh start in less than 72 hours. Some kind of record, probably. But even knowing that, even understanding the consequences, Lena couldn't bring herself to regret it. Maybe that made her foolish. Maybe it made her self-destructive. But watching Cole stand alone in that street, watching the whole town turn against him based on accusations and old grudges, she couldn't have stayed silent. Not after everything she'd been through, not after Philadelphia. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd been destroyed by lies, and now she was risking everything to defend a man who'd admitted he actually was guilty. Except Cole hadn't admitted anything. He denied taking the money, denied being a coward, but he hadn't denied the rest. Bank robberies, outlaws, a gang that had scattered when things went bad. Was it true? All of it? And if it was, what did that make her for caring about him anyway? Lena rolled onto her side and pulled the thin blanket up to her chin. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the window in its frame. Winter wasn't done with Red Hollow yet. She must have dozed off eventually because the next thing she knew, someone was pounding on the door. Lena jerked upright, heart racing. Pale morning light filtered through the window. The pounding continued, urgent and insistent. "Miss Whitaker, open up!" Thomas's voice sharp with panic. Lena stumbled to the door and pulled it open. Thomas stood there, hair disheveled, still in his nightshirt under a hastily thrown-on coat. "What's wrong?" "Cole's gone. Rode out before dawn. One of the trappers saw him heading north, away from town." "He's running?" "Looks like it." Thomas ran a hand through his hair. "Can't say I blame him. 5 armed men against 1? Those aren't good odds." Lena's chest tightened. "Did he say anything? Leave a message?" "Not that anyone's heard. He just left." She turned away, processing this. Cole had run, abandoned Red Hollow, abandoned the confrontation, abandoned everything rather than face Victor Hale, exactly what Victor had accused him of doing 5 years ago. "Miss Whitaker?" Thomas's voice gentled. "Maybe it's for the best. At least this way nobody gets killed. Except Cole's reputation, whatever he had left of it. Better a ruined reputation than a bullet in the chest. Logic. Practical, sensible logic that made perfect sense and felt completely wrong. Lena grabbed her coat. "I need to talk to him." "What?" "No, Lena, you can't." "I can, and I will." "Where does the trapper think he went?" "North, toward his cabin, but you don't know the trails. You'll get lost, or worse." Thomas caught her arm. "Please, think about this. Cole made his choice. Let him go." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because he saved my life. Because he's running from the same thing I ran from, judgment without mercy, condemnation without understanding. Because someone needs to tell him he doesn't have to face this alone." "Because it's the right thing to do," Lena said. Thomas stared at her for a long moment, then sighed in defeat. "You're going to get yourself killed. You know that?" "Probably." "And I can't talk you out of it?" "No." He muttered something under his breath that might have been a prayer or might have been a curse. "Fine, but you're not going alone. Give me 10 minutes to get dressed and saddle the horses." "Thomas, you don't have to." "Yes, I do, because if I let you ride out there by yourself and something happens, I'll never forgive myself." He was already moving toward the stairs. 10 minutes. Don't leave without me." Lena used the time to change into her least ruined dress and braid her hair back tight. Her hands shook as she worked. This was insane. Chasing after a man who'd made it clear he didn't want her help, riding into wilderness she didn't know, all while Victor Hale and his men were somewhere in town waiting for sunset. But the alternative was letting Cole run, letting him believe he was exactly what Victor said he was, a coward who abandoned people when things got hard. And Lena knew what that belief did to a person, how it ate you alive from the inside. Thomas met her downstairs with 2 horses already saddled. "The trapper said Cole was on the north trail about an hour ago. If we hurry, we might catch him before he reaches the cabin." They rode out as the sun climbed higher, turning the snow-covered landscape into something almost beautiful. The trail was clear enough, single rider, fresh tracks, moving fast. Running. After an hour, Thomas pulled up his horse. There. Ahead, maybe a quarter mile, a lone rider moved through the trees. Lena's heart jumped. "Cole!" Her voice carried across the distance. The rider stopped, turned. Even from this far away, she could see the tension in his shoulders. They closed the distance slowly. When they were close enough to see his face, Lena's breath caught. Cole looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days, like he'd been fighting a war inside his own head and losing. What are you doing here? His voice was flat, empty. Coming after you, Lena said. Why? Because you don't get to run. Not like this. Cole's jaw tightened. I'm not running. I'm leaving. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks the same. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. I don't owe you an explanation. Thomas cleared his throat. Cole, listen. Stay out of this, Thomas. Can't do that. Not when you're about to make the biggest mistake of your life. Cole laughed, bitter and harsh. You think this is a mistake? Going back there is the mistake. Victor wants a fight. He wants me to stand and face him so he can put a bullet in my head in front of everyone. That's not justice. That's execution. So you're just going to let him win? Lena asked. He already won. 5 years ago when the gang fell apart. 5 years I've been hiding, trying to convince myself I could outrun what I did. But Victor's right. You can't outrun the past. It catches up eventually. Then stop running and face it. I am facing it. By leaving. By making sure nobody else gets hurt because of me. Cole's eyes found hers. Especially you. The words landed soft and painful. Lena urged her horse closer. I'm not some fragile thing that needs protecting. No. You're a woman with a future, a job, a chance to build something good here. Don't throw that away for me. Maybe I'm tired of being careful. Maybe I'm tired of letting other people decide what I deserve. Lena, they did it to me in Philadelphia. Destroyed my reputation, my career, my whole life based on lies. And I ran, just like you're doing now. And you know what? It didn't help. The shame followed me. The fear followed me. Running doesn't solve anything. It just makes you good at running. Cole flinched like she'd hit him. Is that what you want? Lena pressed. To spend the rest of your life running, moving from place to place, always looking over your shoulder, never staying long enough to matter to anyone. Better than getting people killed. Who says anyone has to die? Victor does. He's not going to walk away empty-handed. Then give him what he wants. Cole's expression went cold. I don't have $40,000. I never did. The money burned in the bank fire, just like I told him. Then tell everyone that. Tell the whole town. Let them hear your side. You think they'll believe me? An outlaw's word against Victor's? They might, if you give them the chance. Thomas spoke up. She's right, Cole. People in Red Hollow aren't all like Vernon Price. Some of them are decent, fair. They'll listen if you're honest. And if they don't, then at least you tried. At least you stood your ground instead of running. Thomas paused. Your mother wouldn't want you to run. Cole's whole body went rigid. Don't bring her into this. Why not? She raised you to be better than this, to face your mistakes, not hide from them. She also raised me not to get innocent people killed over my past. Nobody's innocent here, Lena said quietly. We've all done things we regret, made choices we wish we could take back. But we don't get to erase those choices. We only get to decide what we do next. Cole looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his expression shifted. Why do you care so much? Because I see myself in you. Because I know what it's like to carry shame that isn't yours to carry. And I know what it's like to let other people's judgment define you. Lena's voice cracked. Don't let Victor do that. Don't let him make you into the coward he says you are. Silence stretched between them. A bird called somewhere in the trees. The horses shifted, breath steaming in the cold air. Finally, Cole spoke. Even if I go back, even if I tell them everything, it won't change what Victor does. He'll still come for me. Maybe. But you won't be alone. Lena met his eyes. I'll stand with you. Thomas will stand with you. Maybe others will too. And if it goes bad, if people get hurt, then we deal with it together. Cole closed his eyes. When he opened them again, something had changed. The emptiness was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like hope, or maybe just resignation. You're both crazy, he said. Thomas grinned. Probably, but we're your kind of crazy. Cole shook his head, but the ghost of a smile touched his lips. All right, we go back. But on one condition, if things turn violent, you both get clear. Understood? Cole, that's the condition, Lena. Take it or I keep riding north. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she wasn't leaving no matter what happened. but the set of his jaw told her he meant it. Fine, she lied. They turned the horses back toward Red Hollow. The ride back felt longer than the ride out. Nobody spoke much. Cole rode with his shoulders tight, like he was heading to his own execution. Thomas looked nervous, checking over his shoulder every few minutes, and Lena just tried to convince herself this wasn't the stupidest thing she'd ever done. They reached town around noon. Word must have spread that Cole was back because people came out of buildings to stare. The whole town seemed to be holding its breath, waiting. Vernon Price stood outside the saloon with Caroline at his side. His expression was smug. Changed your mind, Maddox? Never left, Cole said. Just needed to clear my head. Looks like you brought your friends back too. How touching. Lena ignored him. Where's Victor Hale? Waiting for sunset, like he said. Vernon's eyes narrowed. You should be preparing for your town council meeting, Miss Whitaker. Not gallivanting around the countryside with outlaws. The meeting's not until Monday. We moved it up. Today. 2 o'clock. He pulled out a pocket watch. You've got 90 minutes. Of course they had. One more thing designed to make her life difficult. Thomas dismounted and helped Lena down. She'll be there. See that she is. Her position hangs in the balance. Vernon walked away, Caroline following with a satisfied smile. Cole swung down from his horse. You should go, deal with the council. Not a chance. Lena, I said no. The council can wait. She looked at Thomas. Can't they? Thomas grimaced. Technically, missing a scheduled meeting could be grounds for dismissal. Then I guess I'm getting dismissed. You don't mean that. Yes, I do. Lena turned to Cole. What's the plan? He looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression stopped him. I need to talk to a few people. See if anyone's willing to listen to my side before Victor makes this into a bloodbath. I'll come with you. So will I, Thomas added. Cole studied them both, then nodded slowly. All right. But we start with the sheriff. The sheriff's office sat at the far end of Main Street, a small building with bars on the windows and a crooked sign. Inside, Sheriff Daniel McAllister sat behind a desk covered in papers, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. He was in his 50s, weathered and tired, with the kind of face that had seen too much and stopped being surprised by anything. Cole Maddox, he said without looking up. Heard you were back. Sheriff? Here to turn yourself in? For what? McAllister finally looked up. For whatever Victor Hale says you did. That's how this usually works, isn't it? Accusation, confrontation, somebody ends up dead or in jail. I didn't come here to fight. Then why'd you come back at all? Because running doesn't solve anything. Cole stepped closer. I want to tell you what really happened. 5 years ago, the truth. The sheriff leaned back in his chair. I'm listening. Cole took a breath. I rode with Victor's gang. That part's true. We hit banks, stagecoaches, sometimes payroll shipments. I was young, stupid, thought I was making easy money. My mother had just died, and I was angry at the world. Lena's chest tightened. This was the first time Cole had talked openly about his past. We planned one last job, Cole continued. Big bank in Cheyenne. Supposed to be enough money to set us all up for life. But it went wrong. Someone tipped off the law. They were waiting for us. What happened? Fire broke out during the shooting, spread fast, caught the whole bank. People died. Customers, clerks, a guard. The money burned too, all of it. We got away, but barely. Cole's voice went rough. I couldn't stomach it anymore. The violence, the death. So I took my share of what little we'd grabbed before and disappeared. Figured the gang would move on, find someone else to replace me. But they didn't. No. Victor blamed me for the tip-off. Said I'd sold them out to save myself. Wasn't true, but he needed someone to hate. Cole met the sheriff's eyes. I've been hiding ever since, not because I'm a coward, because I didn't want to bring more violence into the world. McAllister was quiet for a long moment. You got proof of any of this? No, just my word. That's not worth much in a court of law. I know, but it's the truth. The sheriff rubbed his face. Here's the problem, Maddox. Even if I believe you, and I'm not saying I do, Victor Hale's not wanted for anything. He's clean as far as the law's concerned. I can't arrest him just because he's making threats. What if he follows through? Then I'll deal with it. But until he breaks the law in my jurisdiction, my hands are tied. So you're going to let him start a fight in the middle of town? I'm going to try to prevent a fight. But if you two want to shoot each other, I can't stop you. McAllister stood. My advice? Give Victor something, even if it's not what he wants. Enough to save face and leave town. I don't have anything to give. Then you better figure something out, because sunset's coming whether you're ready or not. They left the sheriff's office with nothing gained and everything still hanging in the balance. Cole looked defeated, Thomas looked worried, and Lena felt the weight of the impossible settling on her shoulders. We need help, she said. From who? Cole asked. The town hates me. The law won't intervene. We're on our own. Not entirely. Thomas glanced at his watch. It's almost 2, Lena's council meeting. I'm not going. You should. Let them see you supporting Cole. Let them see you're not afraid. Or let them fire me for insubordination, Lena muttered. Maybe. But if you don't show up at all, they'll definitely fire you. Thomas gripped her shoulder. Go. Make your case. I'll stay with Cole. Lena looked at Cole. He nodded slightly. He's right. You can't throw everything away for this. I already have. Then don't make it worse. She wanted to argue, but the clock was ticking and the church bells were starting to ring. 2:00. Fine, but I'm coming back after. We'll be at the general store, Thomas said. Lena ran toward the church, her heart pounding. The council was already assembled when she burst through the doors. Vernon, Caroline, and 3 other men she'd met briefly at the first meeting. They all turned to stare. Miss Whitaker, Vernon said coldly. How kind of you to join us. I'm sorry I'm late. Late implies you intended to be on time. I suspect you had no intention of attending at all. Lena straightened her spine. I'm here now. What did you want to discuss? Your conduct, your fitness for the position of teacher. Vernon pulled out a piece of paper. We've received complaints. Parents concerned about your association with Cole Maddox. Your public defense of a known criminal. Your apparent disregard for the moral standards this community expects. I defended basic fairness. You defended a thief. I defended a man being judged without trial, Caroline spoke up, her voice saccharine. Miss Whitaker, surely you understand why parents might be concerned. A teacher is meant to be a moral example for children. Associating with outlaws sends the wrong message. And condemning a man without hearing his side sends the right one? That's not the point. It's exactly the point. Lena's voice rose. You want to fire me because I stood up for someone the town has decided to hate. Fine. Do it. But don't pretend it's about protecting children or upholding standards. It's about controlling people. About making sure everyone falls in line. Vernon's face reddened. How dare you? I dare because I've been through this before. In Philadelphia, I was accused of something I didn't do. The school board didn't investigate, didn't ask my side. They just believed the accusations and destroyed my career. Lena's hands shook. I won't sit quietly while you do the same thing to Cole. Cole Maddox admitted to being an outlaw. He admitted to his past. That's called honesty, something this town could use more of. One of the other council members, a farmer named Harrison, cleared his throat. Miss Whitaker has a point. We are being quick to judge. Vernon glared at him. She's defending a criminal. She's defending due process, Harrison said. Seems to me we should at least hear what Maddox has to say before we run him out of town. We don't owe him anything. Maybe not, but we owe ourselves better than mob justice. The words hung in the air. Caroline looked furious. Vernon looked blindsided. The other 2 council members exchanged glances. Finally, one of them spoke. I move we table the discussion of Miss Whitaker's employment until after the situation with Victor Hale is resolved. Seconded, Harrison said immediately. Vernon's jaw clenched. Fine. Meeting adjourned. He stood abruptly and stalked out, Caroline hurrying after him. Harrison approached Lena. That was brave. Stupid maybe, but brave. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You're still on thin ice, but for what it's worth, I think Cole deserves a chance to speak, and I think you deserve a chance to teach without interference. He tipped his hat. Good luck, Miss Whitaker. You're going to need it. Lena left the church feeling shaky, but somehow lighter. She hadn't won. Hadn't even really fought. But she'd made them hear her. That was something. She found Cole and Thomas at the general store, both looking tense. How'd it go? Thomas asked. I still have a job. Barely. Lena looked at Cole. Harrison thinks you should speak publicly. Tell your side to the whole town before Victor's deadline. Cole shook his head. Won't make a difference. It might. Lena, you told the sheriff the truth. Now tell everyone. Let them decide for themselves instead of letting Victor control the narrative. And if they still choose Victor, then at least you tried. Thomas nodded slowly. She's right. People respond to honesty. Maybe not Vernon Price, but the others? They might surprise you. Cole looked between them, conflict written across his face. When? Now, Lena said. Before you lose your nerve. I never had any nerve to begin with. Liar. You pulled me out of a blizzard. You're facing down 5 armed men at sunset. You've got more nerve than anyone I know. She held out her hand. Come on, let's go tell your story. For a moment, Cole just stared at her outstretched hand. Then slowly, he took it. His palm was rough, calloused, warm against hers. Together they walked back into the street. Thomas rang the church bell, 3 sharp pulls that echoed across Red Hollow. The signal for a town gathering. Within minutes, people started emerging from buildings, curious, suspicious, ready for whatever came next. Cole stood in the middle of Main Street, Lena at his side, Thomas beside her. The crowd grew, 30 people, 40, 50. More than Lena had expected. Vernon Price pushed to the front. What's the meaning of this? Cole wants to speak, Thomas said, and you're all going to listen. We don't have to listen to anything. Yes, you do. Harrison stepped forward from the crowd. Man's got a right to defend himself. Let him talk. Murmurs rippled through the gathering. Some hostile, some curious. Cole took a breath. When he spoke, his voice carried clear and strong across the street. Most of you know who I am, Cole Maddox, the outlaw who lives north of town, the criminal you've been whispering about for years. He paused. You're not wrong. I was those things. I rode with Victor Hale's gang, robbed banks, broke the law, got people killed. The crowd stirred, Lena's heart hammered. But I left that life 5 years ago. After a job went bad and innocent people died because of our greed, I couldn't do it anymore, couldn't be that person. Cole's voice roughened. So I disappeared, came out here, built a cabin, tried to live quiet, tried to make up for what I'd done by not being that man anymore. You ran, someone called out, like a coward. Yeah, I did. Because I was afraid of what I'd become, afraid I'd hurt more people. Cole's eyes swept the crowd. But Victor thinks I ran with his money, thinks I betrayed the gang and kept $40,000 for myself. That's a lie. The money burned in the bank fire. I don't have it, never did. Convenient story, Vernon sneered. It's the truth. And I'll swear to it on anything you want. Cole's voice hardened. I've done plenty of things worth condemning, but stealing from my gang, betraying them, that's not one of them. Then why's Victor so convinced? Caroline asked. Because he needs someone to blame. Because admitting the money's just gone means admitting we failed, that we killed people for nothing. Cole's shoulders straightened. I'm guilty of a lot, but not that. And I'm done running from accusations that aren't true. Silence fell over the crowd. Lena held her breath. Then Sheriff McAllister spoke up. You willing to put that in writing? Sign a statement? Yes. And if evidence surfaces that proves you're lying, then arrest me. I'll face whatever punishment comes. Cole looked around at all the faces watching him. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for the chance to prove I'm not the man Victor says I am, that I can be better than my past. More silence. Then incredibly, Harrison started clapping. Slow, steady applause. Others joined in. Not everyone. Not even most. But enough that the sound built, filled the street, became something real. Vernon looked furious. Caroline looked shocked, and Lena felt tears prick her eyes. Cole had done it. He'd stood in front of everyone and told the truth. The applause faded. Cole nodded once, awkward with the attention, and started to turn away. That's when Victor Hale stepped out of the saloon. 5 men flanked him, all armed, all watching with cold eyes. Touching speech, Victor said. Really? Almost made me believe you. He smiled. But here's the thing, Cole. I don't care if the money burned. I don't care if you're reformed. You owe me 5 years. You owe me the life I could have had if you hadn't run. I don't owe you anything. We'll see about that. Victor's hand drifted toward his gun. Sun's almost down. Time to settle accounts. The crowd pulled back, giving them space. Lena's blood went cold. This was it. The moment everything fell apart. Cole's hand moved toward his own gun, and then Lena did something completely insane. She stepped between them. No, Victor laughed. The little teacher, how noble. Get out of the way, Lena, Cole said, voice tight. No, this ends now, without violence. You can't stop this. Watch me. Lena turned to Victor. You want compensation? Fine. Name your price. Something reasonable, something Cole can actually pay. Victor's eyebrows rose. You offering to pay his debts? If I have to. Lena, don't, Cole started. How much? She demanded. Victor studied her, amused and calculating. $5,000, cash. By tomorrow. The number hit like a punch. $5,000 might as well be $5 million. That's impossible, Thomas said. Then I guess we're back to the original plan. Victor's smile widened. Unless Cole wants to run again. I'll even give you a head start, for old time's sake. Cole's face was stone. His hand stayed near his gun. The sun touched the horizon, painting everything gold and red. Lena's mind raced. There had to be a way out. Had to be something. I'll pay it. Everyone turned. A man stepped forward from the crowd. Older, well-dressed, with the bearing of someone used to making important decisions. Who the hell are you? Victor asked. Marcus Chen. I own the mining operation east of here. He looked at Cole. I know you. You pulled my foreman out of a collapsed shaft 2 years ago. Saved his life. Cole blinked. That was the kind of thing a good man does, not an outlaw. Marcus turned to Victor. I'll front the $5,000. Call it a loan. Cole can work it off. You're joking. I never joke about money. Marcus's expression was steel. Take it or leave it, but if you turn it down, everyone here will know this was never about the money. It was about revenge, and that makes you the villain, not him. Victor's jaw clenched. His men shifted, hands moving toward weapons. The whole street held its breath. Finally, Victor laughed, sharp and bitter. Fine. You want to waste your money on a liar, that's your business. He held out his hand. Cash. Now. My bank doesn't open until Monday. Then we've got a problem. No problem. I'll write a promissory note, signed and witnessed, legally binding. You can cash it Monday morning. Victor looked like he wanted to argue, but he'd backed himself into a corner. Refusing would prove Marcus right, that this was about revenge, not money. Fine, he spat. But if that note doesn't clear, it will. Marcus pulled out a small notebook and started writing. Sheriff McAllister, would you witness this? The sheriff stepped forward, looking relieved the situation hadn't ended in bloodshed. The note was signed, witnessed, handed over. Victor stared at it like it was poison. Then he looked at Cole. This doesn't change what you are, what you did. I know. You're still a coward. Maybe. But I'm done running. Victor's expression twisted with fury. For a second, Lena thought he might draw anyway, might decide that killing Cole was worth more than money. But his men were already backing away, sensing the moment had passed. Let's go, Victor said finally. This town stinks anyway. He walked away, his men following. The crowd watched in silence until they disappeared into the saloon to collect their things. Then the street erupted, people talking, shouting, arguing, some praising Cole, others condemning him. The town splitting along lines that had probably always been there. Lena didn't care about any of it. She turned to Cole, who stood frozen, looking like he couldn't quite believe what had just happened. You're okay, she whispered. Yeah. His voice was rough. Thanks to you and Marcus. He looked at the mine owner. I don't know how to repay. Don't worry about it. Consider it an investment in doing the right thing. Marcus tipped his hat. Besides, I could use a good man at the mine. Someone reliable. If you're interested. Cole swallowed hard. I'll think about it. You do that. The crowd was starting to disperse. The crisis was over. Victor Hale would leave, Cole would stay, and life in Red Hollow would go on. Different now. Changed by what had happened here. Thomas clapped Cole on the shoulder. You did it. Actually did it. We did it. All of us. Cole's eyes found Lena's. especially you. I didn't do anything except get in the way. You stepped between me and a gun. You offered to pay my debt. You—" He stopped, emotion crossing his face too fast to name. "You stood by me when nobody else would. Someone had to. But it didn't have to be you. You could have walked away, should have walked away. I don't walk away from people who matter." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning they weren't quite ready to acknowledge. Cole took a step closer. "Lena," Sheriff McAllister interrupted. "Maddox need you to come sign that statement. Make it official." The moment broke. Cole nodded, stepping back. "Yeah, of course." He followed the sheriff toward the office, leaving Lena standing in the street with Thomas. "That was close," Thomas said. "Too close. But it worked out. Against all odds, it actually worked out." He smiled. "You're either very lucky or very stubborn." "Probably both." They walked back toward the general store as the sun finally set, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Behind them, Red Hollow settled back into itself, changed but still standing. Lena let herself breathe for the first time in hours. It wasn't over. Not really. Cole still had Marcus's debt to pay. She still had to convince the town council she deserved to keep her job. Victor might still cause trouble before he left. But right now, in this moment, they'd won. They'd faced the past and survived it, and that had to count for something. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She lay in the narrow bed above the general store, listening to the sounds of Red Hollow settling into quiet. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. The wind rattled the window frame. Normal sounds that should have been comforting, but instead just reminded her how much had changed in less than a week. She kept seeing Cole's face when Marcus had stepped forward. The disbelief, the relief, the way he'd looked at her afterward, like he couldn't quite understand why she'd done what she did. Like he didn't think he was worth it. That hurt more than it should have. Around midnight, she gave up on sleep and moved to the window. Main Street was empty except for a single figure sitting on the steps of the church. Even from this distance, even in the dark, she knew who it was. Cole. Lena grabbed her shawl and went downstairs, moving quietly so she wouldn't wake Thomas. The night air bit through her thin dress, but she barely noticed. Her feet carried her down the frozen street toward the church, toward the man who'd become impossible to ignore. Cole looked up as she approached. "You should be asleep." "So should you." "Can't." Lena sat down beside him on the cold stone steps. "What are you doing out here?" "Thinking." He stared out at the empty street. "About what Marcus did. About you stepping in front of Victor's gun. About all of it." "Regret coming back?" "No. Maybe." "I don't know." Cole ran a hand through his hair. "I spent 5 years convinced I had to stay away from people. That getting close to anyone would just bring them pain, and then you show up, half frozen, and everything I thought I knew just falls apart. I have that effect on people." He almost smiled. "Yeah, you do." They sat in silence for a moment. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. "Marcus offered me a job," Cole said finally. "Real work. Decent pay. Chance to actually do something instead of just hiding. Are you going to take it?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to believe I can have a normal life here. But another part keeps waiting for it all to fall apart. For Victor to come back. For the town to change their minds. For—" He stopped. "For what?" Cole looked at her, and there was something raw in his eyes. "For you to realize you made a mistake. That I'm not worth defending." "Cole, I'm serious, Lena. You barely know me. You've risked your job, your home, your whole future for someone who might just disappoint you in the end. Everyone might disappoint everyone. That's not a reason to stop trying, isn't it? Look at your life. Philadelphia destroyed you over a lie. The wagon train abandoned you. Mrs. Henderson threw you out. People keep letting you down. And you saved me from freezing to death. Thomas gave me a place to stay. Marcus paid your debt. Harrison stood up in that council meeting." Lena pulled her shawl tighter. "People let me down. But people also show up. Sometimes when you least expect it." Cole was quiet for a long time. Then, "What happened in Philadelphia? You mentioned it before, but you never said what they accused you of." Lena's chest tightened. She'd spent months trying not to think about it, trying to bury the shame and the anger and the sheer unfairness of it all. But sitting here in the dark with Cole, she found the words coming easier than they should have. "There was a student, Michael, 12 years old, struggling with reading. His mother worked long hours and he'd stay after school sometimes just to avoid going home to an empty house. She stared at her hands. I tried to help him, gave him extra lessons, let him practice in my classroom where it was quiet. Nothing inappropriate, nothing wrong. But someone thought otherwise. His mother. She came by one afternoon to pick him up early and saw us alone in the classroom. Michael was reading aloud. I was correcting his pronunciation. Completely innocent. Lena's voice hardened. But she saw what she wanted to see. A young unmarried teacher spending time alone with her son. She went to the school board, made accusations, said I was acting improperly. They believed her? They didn't even investigate. Just took her word and asked me to resign quietly to avoid a scandal. When I refused, when I said I'd done nothing wrong, they made it public, spread rumors, made sure everyone in Philadelphia knew I was that teacher. The bitterness in her voice surprised her. I lost my job, my reputation. My friends stopped talking to me. My landlord evicted me. All because one woman saw something that wasn't there, and the school board cared more about appearances than truth. Cole's jaw clenched. That's not justice. No, but it's how the world works, especially for women. We're guilty until proven innocent, and sometimes not even then. Lena looked at him. That's why I couldn't stay silent when Victor accused you. I know what it's like to be condemned without a fair hearing, to have people believe the worst about you without asking your side. I'm sorry that happened to you. I'm sorry it happened to you too. They sat together on those cold steps, two people who'd been broken by different circumstances but understood each other in ways that mattered. Can I ask you something? Cole said. Anything. Why teaching? After everything that happened, why come out here and try again? Lena considered the question. Because I'm good at it. Because those kids deserve someone who cares. And because I refuse to let what happened in Philadelphia define the rest of my life. She paused. Also because I didn't have a lot of other options. Turns out being labeled a scandal doesn't open many doors. But you could have done something else. Anything else. I could have. But then I'd be letting them win. Letting them take something I love and turn it into something shameful. She met his eyes. I won't give them that power. Just like you're not giving Victor the power to make you run anymore. Cole nodded slowly. Marcus said the job starts Monday if I want it, working the mine. Hard labor, but honest. You should take it. You think? I think you've spent 5 years punishing yourself. Maybe it's time to try something different. Like what? Like actually living. Like letting yourself be part of something instead of always standing outside it. Cole looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. Is that what you're doing? Actually living? I'm trying. How's that working out? Lena laughed despite everything. Ask me after the council decides whether to fire me. They won't. You sound awfully confident. I heard Harrison arguing with Vernon after you left. Said firing you would be the biggest mistake the town could make. That you've got more backbone than half the people in Red Hollow combined. Warmth spread through Lena's chest. He said that? According to Thomas, yeah. They fell into comfortable silence. The cold seeped through Lena's dress, but she didn't want to move. Didn't want to break whatever was happening between them. Finally, Cole spoke. Thank you. For everything. For stepping in front of that gun. For believing I could be better than my past. For... He stopped, searching for words. For seeing me. You're worth seeing. I don't know about that. I do. Cole turned to face her fully, and the look in his eyes made Lena's breath catch. Like he wanted to say something important. Something that scared him. But then he stood abruptly. It's late. You should get some sleep. School starts Monday and you'll need to be ready. The moment shattered. Lena felt the loss of it like a physical ache. Right, of course. She stood too, wrapping her shawl tight. What about you? I'll head back to the cabin. Check on the horses. Cole. Good night, Lena. He walked away before she could respond, disappearing into the darkness like he always did when things got too close, too real. Lena stood alone on the church steps, frustrated and confused and wanting something she couldn't quite name. The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Lena was helping Thomas organize the store when the door opened and 3 women walked in. She recognized one of them, Mrs. Patterson, whose daughter would be in Lena's class. The other 2 were strangers. Miss Whitaker, Mrs. Patterson said. We wanted to talk to you. Mrs. C. Lena's stomach dropped. Here it came. The complaints. The demands that she leave town. Of course, what can I do for you? We wanted to say thank you, Mrs. Patterson smiled, for what you did yesterday, standing up to Victor Hale, defending Cole Maddox. Lena blinked. What? My husband worked with Cole last winter when our barn roof collapsed, one of the other women said. Cole showed up with lumber and tools and didn't leave until the job was done. Wouldn't take a penny for it. That's not the behavior of a bad man. The third woman nodded. My son got lost in a storm 2 years ago. Cole found him and brought him home safe. If Cole says he didn't steal that money, I believe him. We wanted you to know that not everyone in Red Hollow agrees with Vernon Price, Mrs. Patterson continued. There are plenty of us who think you did the right thing, and we'll make sure the council knows it. Lena felt tears prick her eyes. Thank you. That means more than you know. We also wanted to welcome you properly. To the town, to the community. We know things got off to a rough start, but we hope you'll stay. Mrs. Patterson held out a basket. Made you some preserves, and there's bread from Sarah here. And a pie from me, the third woman added. Apple. Cole mentioned once that it was his favorite, so I figured you might like it too. The implication behind those words, that Cole had talked about Lena, that people had noticed something between them, made her cheeks heat. Thank you, she managed. All of you. They chatted for a few more minutes, discussing the school, the students, the upcoming spring. Normal things, friendly things. The kind of conversation Lena hadn't had with anyone except Thomas since arriving in Red Hollow. When they left, she stood holding the basket with tears streaming down her face. See, Thomas said gently, told you not everyone here was bad. I know, I just didn't expect. She wiped her eyes. I thought they'd hate me. Some do, but others see what I see. Someone brave enough to stand up for what's right, even when it costs her everything. I didn't feel brave. I felt terrified. That's what makes it brave. The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparation. Lena spent hours at the schoolhouse, cleaning, organizing, making lesson plans for her first week. She lost herself in the work, grateful for something concrete to focus on. She was arranging primers on the shelf when Cole appeared in the doorway. Heard you had visitors this morning, he said. Lena turned, her heart doing something complicated at the sight of him. News travels fast. Always does in small towns. He stepped inside, looking around at the clean schoolhouse. Place looks good. It's getting there. Still a lot of work to do, but at least it doesn't look like a ruin anymore. Cole moved closer, examining the repaired benches, the organized supplies. You did all this yourself? Thomas helped some, and Harrison brought over extra firewood. People are coming around. Some of them. Others still cross the street when they see me coming. Lena set down the book she was holding. What about you? Did you talk to Marcus? Yeah, told him I'd take the job. Start Monday morning. Relief flooded through her. That's good. Really good. We'll see. Been a long time since I worked for anyone but myself. Cole ran a hand along one of the desks. Feels strange. Committing to stay in one place. Being part of something. Scary? Terrifying. He looked at her. But also, right. Maybe. Maybe's a start. They stood in the quiet schoolhouse, the afternoon light streaming through the windows, and Lena felt the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on her chest. She should ask him to stay. Should tell him that these past few days had meant something, that he meant something. But the words stuck in her throat, tangled with fear and uncertainty and the bone-deep knowledge that she'd already lost so much. What if she was wrong? What if she pushed too hard and scared him away? Cole cleared his throat. I should let you get back to work. You don't have to go. Yeah, I do. Got things to take care of at the cabin before Monday. He moved toward the door, then paused. Lena? Yes? I'm glad you're staying. In Red Hollow, I mean, as the teacher. Me too. He nodded and left, and Lena was alone again with her books and her thoughts, and the frustrating realization that neither of them knew how to say what they actually meant. Sunday arrived cold and clear. Lena woke early, nerves fluttering in her stomach. Tomorrow was her first day teaching. Tomorrow, she'd face 20 students and their parents and prove she deserved this job. She dressed carefully in her least damaged dress, braided her hair, and tried to eat the breakfast Thomas brought up. Her stomach rejected most of it. You'll be fine, Thomas said, watching her push food around her plate. What if they don't listen? What if their parents pull them out? Then you teach whoever shows up. But I don't think that'll happen. Word is, most families plan to send their kids. You've got support, Lena. More than you think. She wanted to believe him. The morning passed slowly. Lena walked through town, noting the looks she got. Some friendly, some hostile, most just curious. She was heading back to the store when she saw the commotion outside the saloon. A crowd had gathered. Angry voices carried across the street. Lena's heart sank. Not again. She pushed through the crowd and found Cole standing face to face with a man she didn't recognize. Older, weathered, with a star pinned to his vest. A marshal. Have a warrant for your arrest, the marshal was saying. Cole Maddox, you're wanted for bank robbery in Cheyenne, Wyoming. 15 counts. You're coming with me. The words hit like a punch. Cole's face had gone carefully blank. That was 5 years ago. Don't matter how long ago it was, crime's a crime. The marshal pulled out handcuffs. You can come easy, or we can do this the hard way. Wait! Sheriff McAllister stepped forward. Sam, let's talk about this. Cole's been living clean for years. He's not running anymore. Not my problem. I got a warrant. I gotta serve it. But no buts, Dan. You know how this works. Lena pushed forward. He was defending himself yesterday, against Victor Hale. That's why all this is happening now. The marshal, Sam, looked at her. Who are you? Lena Whitaker. I'm a witness. Victor Hale came to town making threats. He's the real criminal here. Victor Hale's not wanted for anything. Cole Maddox is. Sam's voice wasn't unkind, but it was firm. I'm sorry, miss, but the law is the law. Cole spoke quietly. It's all right, Lena. No, it's not. Yes, it is. He looked at her, and his eyes were resigned, tired, like he'd been expecting this all along. I knew this could happen, that the past would catch up eventually. But you didn't run. You stayed. You faced it. And now I'll face this too. Cole held out his hands for the cuffs. Where are you taking me? Cheyenne. Stand trial for the robberies. What's the sentence if he's convicted? Thomas asked. Sam hesitated. Could be anywhere from 10 to 20 years, depending on the judge. The crowd murmured. Lena felt the world tilt sideways. 10 to 20 years. For crimes Cole had already tried to atone for. For a past he'd spent 5 years running from. There has to be another way, she said desperately. He's changed. He's not that person anymore. That's for a jury to decide. Sam cuffed Cole's hands in front of him. The metallic click echoed in the sudden quiet. Cole looked at the crowd, at the faces of people he'd helped over the years, people who'd started to see him as more than his past. Then his eyes found Lena's. Take care of yourself, he said softly. Cole, I mean it. Don't throw away everything you've built here. Not for me. I'm not giving up on you. You should. He tried to smile and failed. I'm not worth it. Stop saying that. The marshal started to lead him away. Cole went without resistance, his shoulders squared, his head up, facing this like he'd faced everything else, alone. Lena stood frozen, watching him go, her mind screaming at her to do something, say something, fix this somehow. But what could she do? He was right. The law was the law. And Cole had broken it, no matter how long ago, no matter how much he'd changed. The crowd began to disperse, muttering. Some looked sympathetic, others satisfied, like justice was finally being served. Vernon Price stood near the saloon entrance, Caroline beside him, both wearing expressions of smug vindication. Told you, Vernon said as Lena passed. Men like that don't change. They just get what's coming to them. Something inside Lena snapped. She turned on him, fury burning away the shock. You did this. You or Victor. You made sure that marshal showed up. I have no idea what you're talking about. Don't lie. Victor threatened to hurt people if Cole didn't pay. When that didn't work, he made sure the law came after him instead. That's a serious accusation, Miss Whitaker. Do you have proof? She didn't. Just rage and certainty and the bone-deep knowledge that this wasn't justice. This was revenge. Cole will have his day in court, Vernon continued smoothly. If he's innocent, he'll be freed. If he's guilty, he'll pay. That's how the law works. The law isn't always right. Perhaps not. But it's all we have. He tipped his hat. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have business to attend to. He walked away, leaving Lena shaking with impotent fury. Thomas appeared at her elbow. Come on, let's go. We have to do something. Like what? I don't know, but we can't just let them take him. Lena, he's already gone. The marshal left 10 minutes ago. They're halfway to Cheyenne by now. She turned and saw he was right. Main Street was empty except for the usual traffic. Cole was gone. Really, truly gone. And she'd just stood there and watched it happen. That night, Lena paced the small room above the store, unable to sit still, unable to think straight. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Cole's face. The resignation. The acceptance of a fate he believed he deserved. She thought about the trial. About 12 strangers deciding Cole's future based on crimes committed by a younger, angrier version of him. About lawyers and judges who didn't know that he'd saved her life, that he'd helped rebuild barns and find lost children, that he'd spent 5 years trying to be better. Would any of that matter in a courtroom? Probably not. The law saw things in black and white, guilty or innocent, legal or illegal. It didn't have room for context or growth or the messy reality of people changing. Around midnight, someone knocked on the door. Lena opened it to find Harrison and 2 other men she recognized from town, workers by the look of them, honest, weathered faces. Miss Whitaker, Harrison said, we need to talk. She let them in, confused. We've been discussing Cole's situation, Harrison continued, and we think there might be a way to help. How? Character witnesses. People who can testify to who Cole is now, not who he was 5 years ago. If enough of us speak up, tell the jury what kind of man he's become, it might make a difference. Hope flickered in Lena's chest. You'd do that? Testify for him? We would. But it's not enough. We need more. Lots more. A whole town's worth of people willing to stand up and say Cole deserves another chance. Harrison looked at her steadily. We were hoping you'd help organize it. Me? You stood up to Victor Hale. You defended Cole when nobody else would. People respect that. If you ask them to help, they'll listen. Lena's mind raced. What about Vernon, Caroline? They'll fight this. Let them. They're not the whole town. There are plenty of good people here who know right from wrong. One of the other men spoke up. My name's Robert. Cole helped me last spring when my cart broke down 20 miles from nowhere. Stayed with me through the night, helped fix it at dawn. Never asked for anything. That's the kind of man he is. The third man nodded. I'm James. Cole pulled my wife out of a frozen creek 2 winters back, gave her his coat, carried her 3 miles to the doctor. Saved her life. I owe him everything. These weren't just empty words. These were debts. Real, meaningful connections that Cole had built without even realizing it. He'd spent 5 years thinking he was alone, thinking nobody cared. He'd been wrong. What do you need me to do? Lena asked. Harrison smiled. Help us make a list. Everyone Cole's helped over the years, we'll approach them, ask them to write statements or agree to testify. Then we'll send everything to the court in Cheyenne, show them that Red Hollow stands behind Cole Maddox. When's the trial? Marshall said it's scheduled for 2 weeks from now. That gives us time to gather testimonies and make the trip to Cheyenne. The trip? You didn't think we'd let you go alone, did you? Harrison's eyes twinkled. Cole needs people in that courtroom. Familiar faces. Support. We're going with you. Lena's throat tightened. Thank you, all of you. Don't thank us yet. We've got a lot of work to do. They spent the next 2 hours making a list. Every person Cole had helped, every kindness he'd shown, every life he'd touched in 5 years of quiet, unassuming decency. The list was longer than Lena expected. Over the next week, Lena barely slept. She taught during the day, and that was its own miracle because the students showed up, and their parents were mostly polite, and the work was exactly as hard and rewarding as she'd hoped. But every spare moment went to Cole's defense. She visited families, asked for written statements, listened to story after story of Cole's quiet heroism. The roof he'd fixed, the supplies he'd shared during a harsh winter, the animals he'd rescued, the children he'd helped. Piece by piece, a picture emerged of a man who'd spent 5 years trying to make up for his past, not by grand gestures or public declarations, but by showing up, by helping, by being the kind of person his mother had raised him to be. Thomas helped coordinate everything, organizing the statements, arranging transportation to Cheyenne. Harrison rallied support from the families Lena hadn't reached yet. Even some of Vernon's allies started to waver. Turned out Cole had helped a lot of people over the years, including some of Vernon's own workers. By the end of the week, they had 37 written statements and a list of 15 people willing to make the trip to Cheyenne to testify in person. 15 people who believed Cole deserved a second chance. On the Sunday before the trial, Lena stood in the schoolhouse and looked at the stack of papers on her desk. 37 voices saying the same thing. Cole Maddox had changed. Cole Maddox deserved mercy. Would it be enough? She didn't know. But it was something, and something was better than nothing. That evening, Thomas found her sitting on the church steps, the same spot where she'd talked to Cole the week before. "You ready for tomorrow?" he asked. "No. But I'm going anyway. It's a 2-day ride to Cheyenne. We'll need to leave at dawn if we want to make it in time for the trial." "I'll be ready." Thomas sat beside her. "You know there's a chance this doesn't work, right? That the jury convicts him anyway?" "I know." "And you're still going?" "Yes." "Why?" "I mean, I know you care about him, but it's a lot. Closing the school for 3 days, riding to Cheyenne, putting yourself in the middle of a trial. You barely know him, Lena." She'd been asking herself the same question for days, and the answer was always the same, because nobody stood up for me in Philadelphia. Nobody asked my side of the story or cared whether the accusations were true. They just let me fall. Lena looked at Thomas. "I won't do that to someone else, especially not to Cole. He deserves someone in his corner, and if nobody else will be there, then I will." Thomas nodded slowly. "Fair enough." He paused. "For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing, even if it's hard." "Everything worth doing is hard." "True." He stood, offered his hand. "Come on. You need to eat and get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." Lena let him pull her to her feet. Tomorrow, she'd ride to Cheyenne. Tomorrow, she'd walk into a courtroom and fight for a man who'd given up fighting for himself. Tomorrow, she'd find out if mercy still existed in the world, or if the past always won in the end. They left Red Hollow before sunrise. 15 people on horseback, riding through the pre-dawn cold toward a city none of them particularly wanted to visit. Lena rode near the front with Thomas and Harrison, the stack of testimonies wrapped in oilcloth and tucked safely in her saddlebag. The weight of them felt heavier than paper had any right to. 2 days of riding gave Lena too much time to think about what she'd say in court, about whether any of this would matter, about Cole sitting in some cell in Cheyenne, probably convinced nobody was coming. She wondered if he'd be angry when he saw them, if he'd tell them they were wasting their time. Probably. Cole had never been good at accepting help, at believing he deserved it. They reached Cheyenne late on the second day, exhausted and saddle-sore. The city was bigger than Red Hollow by a magnitude. Actual streets, gas lamps, buildings that stood 3 stories tall. The kind of place where people came to make fortunes or lose them. Harrison knew someone who ran a boarding house near the courthouse. They secured rooms for the night, barely speaking to each other as they ate a quick dinner and collapsed into beds. Tomorrow was the trial. Tomorrow, everything would be decided. Lena lay awake staring at the ceiling, trying to organize her thoughts into something coherent. She'd never testified in court before, never stood in front of a judge and jury and tried to convince them of anything. What if she said the wrong thing? What if she made it worse? What if Cole looked at her and wished she'd stayed in Red Hollow? Sleep came eventually, fitful and full of anxious dreams. Morning arrived too fast. Lena dressed in her best dress, which wasn't saying much, and braided her hair with shaking hands. Downstairs, the others were already gathering. Nervous energy filled the room. These were working people, farmers and miners and shopkeepers. Not the type who felt comfortable in courtrooms, but they were here anyway. For Cole, the courthouse was an imposing brick building with white columns and steps worn smooth by years of use. Inside, it smelled like old wood and fear. Lena's stomach churned as they found their way to the courtroom assigned to Cole's trial. The gallery was already half full. Curious onlookers, people with nothing better to do than watch justice get dispensed. A few faces that made Lena's blood run cold. Victor Hale sitting in the front row with a satisfied smirk. A well-dressed woman beside him who had to be a lawyer. They'd come to watch Cole hang. The Red Hollow contingent filed into the opposite side of the gallery. 15 strong, a show of support that made several heads turn. Lena took a seat near the front, her heart hammering. Thomas sat beside her, steady and calm. "Breathe," he whispered. "I'm trying." The bailiff called for everyone to rise. A judge entered, older man, gray beard, expression that gave away nothing. He took his seat and shuffled papers while the courtroom settled. Then a side door opened and they brought Cole in. Lena's breath caught. He looked thin, tired, like 2 weeks in jail had hollowed him out from the inside. His hands were cuffed in front of him and he walked with his head down, not looking at anyone. Until he reached the defendant's table and saw the red hollow section. Cole stopped moving, just stood there, staring at the 15 people who'd ridden 2 days to be here. His eyes found Lena's. She saw shock, disbelief. Something that might have been hope, but was too fragile to name. "Mr. Maddox," the judge said, "please take your seat." Cole sat, but he kept looking back at them. At her. The trial began with the prosecution laying out their case. 15 bank robberies over a period of 3 years. Cole Maddox had been identified as a member of the gang. Witnesses placed him at several of the scenes. The evidence was damning, not because it was dramatic, but because it was thorough, methodical. The kind of case that didn't leave much room for doubt. Cole's court-appointed lawyer was young, overwhelmed, and clearly out of his depth. He tried to argue that 5 years of clean living should count for something, but the prosecutor shut him down with a single question. Does time served living quietly erase the crimes committed? The answer, legally speaking, was no. By midday, Lena was starting to lose hope. The jury looked convinced. The judge looked impatient. Even Cole's own lawyer seemed resigned to losing. Then came the afternoon session, and everything changed. Harrison stood up. "Your Honor, we have character witnesses who'd like to speak on Mr. Maddox's behalf." The prosecutor objected. "Irrelevant to the charges." "Goes to character," Cole's lawyer countered, finding his spine. "The jury has a right to know who this man is now, not just who he was." The judge considered. "I'll allow it, but keep it brief." Harrison went first, told the story of Cole helping rebuild his barn. Simple, honest testimony that painted Cole as a neighbor, not a criminal. Then James stood, described Cole saving his wife from the frozen creek in detail that made several jurors shift uncomfortably. Robert followed. The broken cart. The long, cold night. Cole's refusal to abandon him. One by one, people from Red Hollow stood and told their stories, each one small, each one seemingly insignificant, but together they built a picture of someone who'd spent 5 years trying to earn redemption through action, not words. The prosecutor tried to dismiss it. None of this erases what he did. "No," Harrison agreed, "but it shows what he chose to do after. That should count for something." The jury was paying attention now, really paying attention. Then the judge looked at Lena. "Miss, you were sitting with these folks. Do you have testimony to offer?" Lena stood on shaking legs. "Yes, Your Honor." Approached the witness stand. She walked to the front of the courtroom, hyper-aware of every eye on her. The bailiff swore her in. She took her seat, and suddenly she was looking out at a room full of strangers who would decide Cole's fate based partly on what she said in the next few minutes. No pressure. "State your name for the record," the judge said. "Lena Whitaker." "And your relationship to the defendant?" Lena hesitated. What was her relationship to Cole? Friend didn't seem strong enough. Allie felt too distant. "He saved my life." That got the jury's attention. The judge leaned forward. "Explain." So Lena did. She told them about the wagon train abandoning her, about the storm, about stumbling onto Cole's cabin more dead than alive. She described his care, his patience, his refusal to ask for anything in return. "He could have turned me away," she said, "could have let me freeze rather than get involved. But he didn't. He pulled me inside and he saved me, and he asked for nothing." "That's very touching," the prosecutor said. "But it doesn't change the fact that he's a criminal." "He was a criminal," Lena corrected. Past tense. The man who robbed those banks? He doesn't exist anymore. The man sitting at that table spent 5 years proving he could be better, that he could change. People don't change, Miss Whitaker. Yes, they do, if they want it badly enough, if they're willing to do the work. Lena looked at the jury. "I was accused of something I didn't do back east. Lost my job, my reputation, Everything. People said I was guilty without ever asking my side, without caring about the truth. I know what it's like to be judged for your worst moment without anyone considering who you actually are. Is this going somewhere? The prosecutor asked. It's going here. Cole Maddox is guilty of the crimes you charged him with. He doesn't deny that. But he's also guilty of spending 5 years helping everyone who needed it, of pulling strangers out of blizzards, of rebuilding barns and finding lost children and being exactly the kind of person we claim to want in the world. Her voice cracked. If we can't find room for mercy, for growth, for the possibility that people can become better than their worst mistakes, then what's the point of any of this? Silence filled the courtroom. The prosecutor looked uncomfortable. The jury looked thoughtful. The judge's expression hadn't changed, but something in his eyes had softened. Thank you, Miss Whitaker. You may step down. Lena returned to her seat on legs that barely held her. Thomas gripped her hand. Well done, he whispered. The prosecution rested. Cole's lawyer made a closing argument that was surprisingly good, building on everything the witnesses had said. The prosecutor countered that the law was the law, that sentiment couldn't override justice. Then the jury was dismissed to deliberate. Everyone filed out of the courtroom to wait. The Red Hollow group clustered together in the hallway, speaking in low voices. Lena couldn't sit still. She paced, her mind replaying every word she'd said, wondering if it had been enough. An hour passed, then 2. Finally, the bailiff called them back. The jury had reached a verdict. Lena's heart climbed into her throat as they filed back into the courtroom. Cole was brought in again, and he looked like he was preparing for the worst. Their eyes met across the room. Lena tried to smile, but her face wouldn't cooperate. The judge entered. Everyone rose, then sat. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman stood. We have, Your Honor. On the charge of 15 counts of bank robbery, how do you find? The pause before he spoke felt like a lifetime. Guilty, Your Honor. Lena's world tilted. Around her, people from Red Hollow made small sounds of disappointment. Victor Hale smiled. But the foreman wasn't finished. However, we'd like to recommend leniency. Based on the character testimony and the defendant's clear efforts at rehabilitation, we believe a reduced sentence is warranted. The judge looked at the jury. What are you proposing? 5 years, Your Honor, with credit for time served and possibility of early release for good behavior. And the foreman glanced at Cole. We recommend he be allowed to serve his sentence performing community service in Red Hollow rather than in prison. Under supervision, of course. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Lena couldn't breathe. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, that's highly irregular, but not unprecedented, the judge interrupted. He studied Cole for a long moment. Mr. Maddox, stand. Cole stood, his expression carefully blank. You committed serious crimes. People were hurt because of your actions. That cannot and will not be forgotten. The judge's voice was stern. However, this court also recognizes that you have spent the last 5 years attempting to make amends. The testimony of these 15 people carries weight. They vouch for your character. They believe in your rehabilitation. He paused, and the courtroom held its breath. Therefore, I'm accepting the jury's recommendation. 5 years of supervised community service to be performed in Red Hollow, Wyoming. You will report monthly to Marshal Samuel Turner. You will not leave the territory without permission. You will continue the work you've been doing, helping your community, being a productive citizen. Any violation of these terms, and you'll serve the remainder of your sentence in prison. Do you understand? Cole's voice was rough. Yes, Your Honor. Good. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down, and the courtroom erupted. The Red Hollow contingent was on their feet, some crying, others cheering. Victor Hale stormed out, his face purple with rage. The jury looked satisfied, like they'd found a way to balance justice with mercy, and Cole just stood there, looking stunned. Lena pushed through the crowd toward him. A guard stepped in her way, but Cole's lawyer waved him off. 5 minutes, he said. Lena reached Cole, and for a moment they just stared at each other. Then Cole spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. You came. Of course I came. I told you not to. Told you to stay away. When have I ever listened to you? Something that might have been a laugh escaped him. Never. You're coming home, Cole. You're coming back to Red Hollow. For 5 years of supervised servitude. That's not exactly freedom. It's better than 20 years in prison. It's better than running. It's a chance to actually live instead of just surviving. Cole's eyes searched hers. Why did you do this? All of this? Because you matter. Because everyone deserves someone in their corner. Because, Lena stopped, the truth of it catching in her throat. Because I couldn't imagine Red Hollow without you. The words hung between them, meaning more than either of them was ready to acknowledge. Time's up, the guard said. Cole was led away to process the paperwork, but he kept looking back at Lena, at the people from Red Hollow who'd ridden 2 days to stand up for him, at proof that he wasn't alone anymore. The ride back to Red Hollow took 3 days because they had to wait for Cole's release and the official transfer of his sentence to Marshal Turner's jurisdiction. Those 3 days felt longer than the 2 weeks before the trial. But finally, they were on the road home. Cole rode in the middle of the group, quiet and still processing everything that had happened. People kept trying to talk to him, to congratulate him, but he seemed overwhelmed by the attention. Lena gave him space, let him absorb it in his own time. It wasn't until the second night, when they'd made camp and everyone else had fallen asleep, that Cole sought her out. She was sitting by the fire, unable to sleep, when he sat down beside her. "Can't believe you organized all that," he said. "It wasn't just me. Thomas, Harrison, everyone helped. But you started it. You pushed for it." Cole stared into the flames. "Why?" "I told you why." "Tell me again, because I need to hear it." Lena took a breath. "Because in Philadelphia, I learned what it feels like when nobody stands up for you, when everyone believes the worst and nobody asks questions. It breaks something inside you, makes you believe you're exactly what they say you are." "Yeah, it does. I didn't want that for you. Didn't want you to believe you were just your mistakes and nothing more." She looked at him. "You're more, Cole. So much more. And I needed you to see that." "I'm starting to." His voice was rough. "Because of you. Because you wouldn't let me give up. Someone very stubborn once pulled me out of a blizzard when he should have let me freeze. Figured I owed him the same kind of stubbornness." Cole almost smiled. Then his expression turned serious. "The next 5 years aren't going to be easy. Community service, monthly check-ins with the marshal, everyone watching to make sure I don't step out of line. So, you've handled worse." "Have I?" "You survived 5 years of isolation thinking you didn't deserve anything better. You survived Victor Hale. You survived a trial that could have sent you to prison for 20 years. Lena shifted closer. "You can survive this too, especially since you won't be doing it alone." "Lena, I'm not going anywhere, Cole. Whether you like it or not, you're stuck with me." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in his expression broke open. "I don't deserve you. Good thing it's not about deserving. It's about choosing. And I choose this. I choose you." The words were out before she could stop them, raw, honest, terrifying. Cole's breath caught. "You don't know what you're saying." "Yes, I do. I'm broken, Lena. Damaged. I've done things. We're all broken. We've all done things we regret. That's what makes us human." She reached out, took his hand. "But we get to choose what we do next, who we become. And I choose to become someone who stands by the people who matter to her." Cole stared at their joined hands. Then, slowly, carefully, he brought her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. It was the gentlest gesture, the most honest. "I choose you too," he whispered. "Even though I probably shouldn't, even though I'll probably mess it up. I choose you." Lena's eyes burned with tears. "Good. That's settled then." They sat together by the fire, hands intertwined, and for the first time in weeks, Lena felt something that had been wound tight inside her chest finally loosen. They still had problems. Cole still had 4 years and 11 months of community service. She still had a school to run and a town council to navigate. Life wasn't going to suddenly become easy, but it was theirs, their choice, their future, and that made all the difference. They reached Red Hollow on a crisp morning 3 days later. Word had traveled fast. Somehow it always did, and half the town was waiting on Main Street when they rode in. Some faces were welcoming, others hostile, most just curious. Vernon Price stood on the steps of the general store, arms crossed, looking like he'd bitten into something sour. Caroline beside him, equally displeased. But there were friendly faces too, Mrs. Patterson and her daughters, Marcus Chen, Sheriff McAllister, and dozens of others who'd signed statements or simply believed Cole deserved a chance. Marshal Turner was there too, official and stern, ready to lay out the terms of Cole's sentence. But before any of that could happen, before speeches or rules or consequences, something unexpected occurred. Harrison started clapping, just slow, steady applause like he'd done in the street 2 weeks ago. Others joined in. Mrs. Patterson, Marcus, Robert and James, Thomas. The sound built, spread, became something bigger than simple applause. It became acknowledgement, acceptance. It became welcome home. Cole sat on his horse, looking stunned. Lena watched his face as the reality of it sank in, that he wasn't coming back to a town that hated him. He was coming back to a community that had chosen to see him as more than his past. Not everyone was clapping. Vernon and Caroline certainly weren't. A few others stood silent, arms crossed, judgment written on their faces. But enough people were clapping that it mattered. Enough that Cole's eyes went bright with unshed tears. He dismounted slowly, and Marshal Turner approached with the paperwork. 5 years supervised community service, Turner said. You'll report to me monthly. Stay out of trouble. Help where you're needed. Think you can manage that? Yes, sir. Good. Because I don't want to send you to prison, Maddox. But I will if you give me reason. You won't have reason. Turner nodded, satisfied. Welcome back to Red Hollow. Try not to mess it up. He walked away, and suddenly Cole was surrounded by people, shaking his hand, clapping his shoulder, welcoming him back. Lena stood back and watched, her heart full. This was what redemption looked like. Not perfect, not universal, but real. Messy. Human. A choice made over and over by people deciding that second chances mattered more than grudges. Later that afternoon, after the crowd had dispersed and Cole had met with Marcus about resuming work at the mine, Lena found him sitting on the church steps again. Their spot, apparently. She sat beside him without asking permission. How you holding up? She asked. Still processing, feel like I'm going to wake up and discover this was all a dream. If it is, I'm having the same one. Cole smiled, and it was the first real smile she'd seen from him in weeks. Thank you for everything. For fighting when I'd given up. For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. That's what people do when they care about each other. Is that what we're doing? Caring about each other? Lena's pulse jumped. I think we've been doing that for a while now. Yeah, I think so too. Cole turned to face her fully. I'm not good at this. At letting people in. At trusting that they'll stay. I know. I'm not great at it either. But I want to try. With you. If you'll let me. Cole Maddox, are you asking me to court you? He actually laughed. I guess I am. Assuming you'd be interested in courting a convicted felon with 5 years of community service ahead of him. Well, when you put it that way, how can I resist? I'm serious, Lena. So am I. She reached for his hand. I'm interested. Very interested. In courting you, standing by you, building something with you. All of it. Even though it won't be easy? Nothing worth having is easy. Besides, I'm pretty good at difficult. Had a lot of practice lately. Cole squeezed her hand. We both have. They sat together as the sun sank lower, painting Red Hollow in shades of gold and amber. Around them, life continued. People going about their business. The town moving forward. And for the first time since the blizzard, since Philadelphia, since everything that had tried to break them, Lena felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The next few months passed in a blur of work and routine and slowly building something that resembled normal life. Lena taught her students, and they actually learned. Some of them even seemed to enjoy it. The parents who'd been skeptical warmed up gradually as they saw their children improve. Vernon Price remained hostile, but his influence was waning. Turned out that standing on the wrong side of mercy cost political capital. Cole worked at the mine, reported to Marshal Turner every month without fail, and slowly became part of Red Hollow in ways he'd never allowed himself before. He ate Sunday dinners at Harrison's house, helped Robert with spring planting, taught James's son to trap. He built a life instead of just surviving. And through it all, Lena was there. They courted slowly, properly, under the watchful eyes of a small town that had strong opinions about everything. Sunday walks after church, shared meals at the boarding house, where Lena had finally been allowed to return. Quiet conversations on the church steps that had become their refuge. It wasn't dramatic or sweeping, there were no grand romantic gestures. But it was real, honest, built on trust that had been earned through crisis and choice. 6 months after the trial, on a warm evening in early summer, Cole asked Lena to ride out to his cabin with him. "I want to show you something," he said. They rode north through familiar trails, the landscape green and alive after the long winter. When they reached the cabin, Cole dismounted and helped her down. "What are we doing here?" Lena asked. "You'll see." He led her around to the side of the cabin where a new structure had been built. A small addition, carefully constructed, with windows that caught the afternoon light. "What is this?" "A room," Cole said. "For you, if you want it." Lena's breath caught. "Cole, I know we're supposed to do things proper. Courting, then engagement, then marriage. And we will. But I wanted you to know that I'm serious about this. About us. About building a future together." He looked nervous, vulnerable. "This cabin's been my hiding place for 5 years. But if you're willing, I want it to become our home. Not right away. When you're ready. But someday." Tears pricked Lena's eyes. "You built me a room. I built us a future. Or at least the beginning of one." His voice softened. "What do you say, Lena Whitaker? Think you could be happy here? With me?" She looked at the cabin, at the careful addition he'd built with his own hands. Then she looked at Cole, at the man who'd pulled her from a blizzard and somehow ended up saving her in ways that had nothing to do with the cold. "Yes," she whispered. "I could be very happy here." Cole's smile was brighter than the summer sun. He pulled her close, and they stood together in the shadow of the cabin while the world turned gold around them. It took another year before they actually married. A year of courtship and planning and Cole finishing the addition properly. A year of Lena teaching and Cole working, and both of them learning how to be together instead of alone. The wedding was small, held in the Red Hollow Church with half the town in attendance. Even Vernon Price showed up, though he sat in the back and scowled through the whole ceremony. Lena wore a dress borrowed from Mrs. Patterson. Cole wore his best shirt, the one without any patches. Thomas stood as best man, Harrison's wife as matron of honor. It was simple, imperfect, exactly right. When the minister asked if they took each other, Lena didn't hesitate. "I do." Cole's voice was rough with emotion. "I do." They were pronounced husband and wife, and when Cole kissed her, the church erupted in cheers. Afterward, there was a celebration in the street. Food and music and dancing. People from all over the territory had come, drawn by the unlikely story of the outlaw and the teacher who'd both found redemption in each other. Late in the evening, when the celebration was winding down, Lena and Cole slipped away. They rode north toward the cabin, their cabin now, under a sky full of stars. "Think they'll ever stop talking about us?" Lena asked. "Probably not. We're Red Hollow's favorite story. The reformed criminal and the disgraced teacher who proved everyone wrong." "I don't know if we proved anyone wrong. We just proved that people are more complicated than their worst moments." Cole looked at her. "That's a better story anyway." They reached the cabin as the moon rose. Inside, it was warm and lived in. Lena's books on the shelves, Cole's traps on the wall, a blend of two lives becoming one. Cole built up the fire while Lena changed out of her wedding dress. When she came back, he was sitting in front of the hearth, staring into the flames. She sat beside him, and he pulled her close. "Are you happy?" he asked quietly. "Very." "You?" "More than I ever thought possible." His arm tightened around her. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is real. That you're real. That all of this actually happened." "Believe it. We're here. We made it." "We did." Cole pressed a kiss to her temple. "Despite everything that tried to stop us." Lena leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart. "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think we were supposed to find each other. Not because of fate or destiny or any of that nonsense, but because we both needed someone who understood what it's like to be broken and still choose to keep going." "You think that's what we did? Chose to keep going?" "I know it is. Every day we choose to try, to trust, to believe we can be better than our pasts." She looked up at him. "That's what love is, I think. Not some grand feeling that sweeps you away, but A choice you make over and over to show up for someone, to stand beside them, to build something together even when it's hard. Cole was quiet for a moment, then, I choose you, Lena Maddox, today and every day after. I choose you too. Always. They sat together in front of the fire, two people who'd been lost and found each other in the middle of nowhere. Two people who'd learned that redemption wasn't about erasing the past or pretending it never happened. It was about acknowledging what you'd done, making amends where you could, and choosing to be better going forward. It was about mercy. Second chances. The stubborn belief that people were worth fighting for. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. But inside the cabin, Lena and Cole were warm and safe and home. The storm that had brought them together was long over, but what they'd built in its wake, that was just beginning. Years later, when people asked Lena about that winter, about the blizzard and the trial and everything that came after, she would smile and say it was the hardest thing she'd ever been through, and the best, because it taught her that strength wasn't about never falling. It was about getting back up, about reaching for help instead of facing everything alone, about believing that tomorrow could be different if you were willing to fight for it. Cole would add that redemption was possible, not easy, not guaranteed, but possible. If you were willing to do the work, if you were willing to face your mistakes instead of running from them, if you were lucky enough to find people who believed you could change. Together, they built a life in Red Hollow. Cole worked at the mine, eventually becoming a foreman. Lena taught for 20 years, shaping young minds and occasionally defending students who needed someone in their corner. They had children, 3 of them, all stubborn and strong-willed and unwilling to give up on anything or anyone. They had hard times, disagreements, moments when the past tried to rear its ugly head, but they faced it together. Because that's what you do when you choose someone, when you decide that their worth isn't determined by their worst day or their biggest mistake. When you understand that people are complicated, messy, capable of both tremendous harm and tremendous good. You stand beside them, you fight for them. You choose them over and over until the choosing becomes as natural as breathing. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they choose you back. On cold winter nights, when snow fell thick and the wind howled, Lena would sit by the fire in their cabin and remember the night she'd stumbled out of a blizzard and into Cole's life. She'd been running from her past, convinced she could leave it behind and start fresh. Turned out you couldn't outrun your past. But you could face it, you could learn from it, you could let it shape you into someone stronger instead of someone bitter. And you could find, in the middle of nowhere, someone who understood exactly what that meant. Cole would join her by the fire, and they'd sit together in comfortable silence. Two people who'd survived their worst and chosen to build their best. The storm had brought them together, but what they'd built from it, a life, a love, a home, that was all their own. And that made all the difference.